Chapter 204. The fire was burning vigorously, and the soup in the pot was boiling, causing the meat of the black dog to roll and writhe in the boiling water. A strong aroma was emanating from the pot. Li Xian licked his lips and carefully tended to the fire. Every now and then, he would take a deep breath and look like he was drooling. The sound of boiling water kept coming from the pot, while large sheets of snowflakes were falling from the outside of the house, landing on the ground and the roof, producing rustling noises. The crowing of cocks and barking of dogs could be heard coming from afar, as well as the greetings of the villagers. It made the house even quieter, and made Zhang Yi's voice sound even more ancient, as if an old ghost who had been dead for several thousand years was talking nonsense. Wuxia knew the background of Yan Dan, Ying Zheng, and the others. But both Su Qin and Zhang Yi thought that Wuxia did not know the background of Yan Dan, Ying Zheng, and themselves. Therefore, they omitted many key points in their narration. However, according to the information he knew, Wuxia had filled in some key details, and had roughly restored the original appearance of the incident. According to Zhang Yi, Ying Zheng had a beloved empress, who was the only woman he loved deeply in his life. This woman held a very important place in his heart. Therefore, after the death of the empress, or rather, after her disappearance, Ying Zheng missed her deeply, and brought her belongings with him. He often took them out to reminisce about her. The belongings in this chest had become a kind of spiritual sustenance for Ying Zheng. Ying Zheng always wore 2 rings on his finger. One was the Black Dragon Spirit Ring, which stored some of his personal belongings. The other was the White Dragon Spirit Ring, a very powerful spirit item, possessing the power to fight against nascent soul and deity transformation experts. During the battle in Meng Mountains, Wuxia casually took a ring from Ying Zheng, and it happened to be the Black Dragon Spirit Ring, which stored all of Ying Zheng's personal belongings. Ying Zheng owned the entire Daqin dynasty, and although those treasures in the Black Dragon Spirit Ring were precious, he did not care about them. However, the belongings of Ying Zheng's empress were very important to him, and he was willing to pay a high price to retrieve them. On the other hand, Wuqi's version was much more detailed. As Zhang Yi did not know Wuqi's background, he had no idea that Wuqi came from the same place as them. Therefore, although his words were cautious, he was very cautious. However, with Su Qin sighing with him, there were some flaws in his words and some inconspicuous information was leaked. This was enough for Wuqi to restore the original appearance of the matter. It was the time when Ying Zheng was a hostage in his youth. At that time, Ying Zheng was in dire straits and was constantly bullied and humiliated. That was when he met his future empress. At that time, Ying Zheng was just an ordinary teenager, and the feelings of a teenager were the most sincere. When he was in dire straits, the care and concern of a young girl was enough to make Ying Zheng remember it for the rest of his life. On top of that, Ying Zheng would become an emperor with great talent and bold vision in the future. Not many people could leave a mark on a peerless emperor like him, but once they did, it would be an unforgettable memory. If not for Su Qin sighing with emotion at the hardship of Ying Zheng's youth, Wuqi would not know that the empress mentioned by Zhang Yi was someone Ying Zheng knew since he was a child. According to the historical records that Wuqi knew, Ying Zheng was a hostage at that time, and it was a very difficult period. Later on, the girl had been accompanying Ying Zheng, accompanying him back to Qin state, inheriting the throne and seizing the power of Qin state. Initially, Zhang Yi wanted to skip this period of history with just one sentence, but Su Qin was too talkative, and began to discuss with Zhang Yi about Ying Zheng's gains and losses during this period. Both of them talked in a very vague way, and if they were people born and raised in this world, they would be fooled by them. But who was Wuqi? He came from Earth, and Lu Xiaobai knew about this period of history very well. Therefore, the conversation between the two was clearly heard by him. In the process of Ying Zheng taking over the state and seizing the power, Ying Zheng's empress played a very important role. It was she who persuaded all the important ministers of Qin state to support Ying Zheng, and it was she who personally got rid of those who plotted against Ying Zheng. She even helped Ying Zheng survive a few assassination attempts. Without her, Ying Zheng would have long become a pile of meat paste, and he would not be the future emperor of Qin dynasty. For Ying Zheng, this girl was not only his first love when he was young, but also his nanny, bodyguard, advisor, and almost an all-round talent. It was exactly because of her protection and help that Yingzheng managed to sit on the throne of Qin state with much difficulty. After that, it was also this girl who came up with a plan to lure and kill the rebellious Lao Ai and force Lu Buwei, who held the sole power in Qin state, to commit suicide. Because even Su Qin did not know about this period of history, Su Qin interjected very enthusiastically on the side, almost trying to get to the bottom of it in detail. Zhang Yi had no choice but to point out the key points in a very vague way. Therefore, when Su Qin knew the true face of this period of history, so did Wu Qi. In fact, Wu Qi knew more than Su Qin, because Su Qin lived in an era earlier than Yingzheng, and the historical materials he knew were not as good as Wu Qi. With the help of the Empress, Yingzheng smoothly took control of the Qin dynasty, and with the help of the Empress, he successfully unified the world and accomplished his great cause. After his success, Yingzheng conferred this girl the title of Empress of Daqin, and gave her the same power and status as Yingzheng. However, this girl was so mysterious, and her ambition was not to be a heavenly god. After assisting Yingzheng to unify the world, this girl wholeheartedly lived in seclusion, practicing the Tao of immortality. Finally, one night, during a thunderstorm, the woman left behind a handwritten letter and disappeared. Since then, Yingzheng's temperament had changed greatly. He began to get close to alchemists, practitioners, and wholeheartedly seek the Tao of immortality. He even sent Su Fu out to sea to search for the elixir of immortality, not for his own immortality, but to find his empress. Even when he traveled around the world, searching for immortals, conferring titles of dragon kings and immortal spirits, it was all for the sake of finding his empress. Because of the hopelessness of immortality, and the excessive longing in his heart, Yingzheng became more and more brutal in his later years. In just a short period of time, he completely wiped out the foundation of the Daqin dynasty. Su Qin looked up and sighed, sighing for Yingzheng. Wu Qi was also staring at Zhang Yi dumbfounded. It turned out that Yingzheng, the mighty ruler of a dynasty, was actually a man of love. But what kind of girl could make Yingzheng so infatuated, so unforgettable, and so unforgettable, even after 1,000 years? 2,000 years had passed, and Yingzheng still carried her relic with him, playing with it day and night. Because Wu Qi had stolen the relic, Yingzheng had even sent out his generals and the imperial advisor of Daqin from far away, just to get the chest back. 10 years of life and death, never thinking, never forgetting, 1,000 miles of lonely grave, no place to talk about desolation. Even if we meet, we should not know each other. A face covered with dust, hair like frost. Last night, a dream suddenly returned home, dressing up by the window, looking at each other without a word. Only 1,000 lines of tears. Every year at the place of heartbreak, on a bright moonlit night, on a short pine hill. Casually plagiarizing a poem of mourning for his dead wife, Wu Qi looked at the falling snow outside the window with a melancholy expression. On the other hand, Su Qin and Zhang Yi were struck dumb by Wu Qi's excellent poem. Both of them kept repeating this plagiarized poem over and over again, their eyes shining brightly. Even Li Xian was staring blankly at Wu Qi with a wine jar in his hand, completely forgetting about the fine wine in the jar. I never thought that His Majesty Yingzheng, a peerless heaven-chosen one I met in Meng Mountains, is actually such a man of love. Wu Qi admires you, said Wu Qi, raising up the wine jar and gulping down 2 mouthfuls of wine. Looking at Zhang Yi, who was still immersed in the poem, Wu Qi said seriously, I really admire the deep friendship between His Majesty Yingzheng and the Queen of Daqin. But as the saying goes, friendship is friendship, and business is business. Although Wu Qi admires the deep friendship between His Majesty Yingzheng and the Queen of Daqin, it was not easy for me to steal this ring when I was surrounded and intercepted by Daqin's generals. Clearing his throat, Wu Qi shoved the box back into the black dragon spirit ring, then said in an unusually serious tone, without any benefits, even if old Mr. Su Qin can help me, it is impossible for me to hand over this box. Frankly speaking, since this is the relic of His Majesty Yingzheng and the Queen, I think Wu Qi can give it to Princess Zhonglu as a precious gift. If His Majesty knows that Wu Qi has given the relic of His Majesty Yingzheng and the Queen to his granddaughter, I believe he will be very happy. Perhaps he will even give Wu Qi another promotion. Just a moment ago, Zhang Yi was still immersed in the melancholy poem, and when he heard Wu Qi's shameless words, he could not help but shiver. "Aren't you afraid of Great Qin's revenge?" he cried out furiously. Wu Qi rose to his feet, laughed out loud and said, "I am, but this is the capital of Great Yin Dynasty. Even if that old fooling Zheng is here, I'll still say the same thing. I can take back the relic of his wife, and I won't take advantage of a dead man. But, what about the benefits? Give me the benefits. Without any benefits, don't even think about taking away a single hair from me. Do you believe that if I give a loud shout, several hundred Earth Immortals in Ji City will rush out and chop you into meat paste?" Li Xian had just risen to his feet with a ferocious gleam in his eyes, but when he heard Wu Qi's threat, he sat back down again. Su Qin laughed dryly and said, calm down, don't get angry. Junior brother, if you can take back the relic of Ying Zheng's wife. No, Empress Daqin, it will be a great achievement. Don't be too stingy. I can only keep you here for a few days, and that won't be a problem. If this little fellow really gives a loud shout and provokes those people in Ji City, I'll leave right away. Don't think that I'll be your scapegoat." Zhang Yi flew into a rage. He glared at Su Qin and said, "What a disloyal man. We are still fellow disciples of the same sect." Su Qin was furious. He glared at Zhang Yi and snorted, "How much is loyalty worth? If you're loyal enough, you shouldn't have eaten half a dog leg more than me in the back mountain when you were learning in the Ghost Valley. I'm the one who hunted that dog, so that half dog leg should belong to me." Zhang Yi said angrily, "You still remember such a trivial matter? Do you remember that you still owe me 3 large sums of money?" Su Qin answered without hesitation, "I've forgotten. I only remember that you still owe me a pair of boots." Both men glared at each other, then cursed at the same time. What a shameless scum. Hastily Wu Qi cried out, Hey, 2 old masters, slow down your petty business that has been going on for thousands of years. Tell me my condition first. If you don't give me enough benefits, I'll take this relic of Empress Daqin and give it away to someone else. It's fine if you don't want to give it to Princess Zhang Lu. I'll give it to some girls in a brothel." Su Qin laughed wildly, while Zhang Yi roared furiously, "How dare you? Little fellow, just you wait. Daqin will never let you go. I'm so mad at you. Well, here's the good thing, it's up to you." With a flip of his hand, a flying sword enshrouded in an immense cold air shot out from Zhang Yi's palm. 130 years ago, His Majesty led us to the great central ridge in the depths of Meng Mountains, and discovered an immortal cave left behind by an immortal. From there we found this lower-grade spirit item, the Snow Dragon Sword. Zhang Yi sneered and said, "A lower-grade spirit item? Have you ever heard of such a treasure?" "A lower-grade spirit item?" Wu Qi burst into a loud laughter. "Damn it, do you really think I'm an idiot?" During the Rare Treasures Conference, that treasure was the innate Earth Element Energy Essence, and I was planning to use it to craft a magical treasure. Do you really think I took it as the acquired Earth Element Energy Essence? Pooh. A lower-grade spirit item. Master Wu Qi even has an innate treasure, and you want to use a lower-grade spirit item to exchange for the relic of Ying Zheng's wife? Dream on. Turning around, Wu Qi kicked the door open and strode out. Zhang Yi was startled, then he shouted hastily. Chapter 205. Hold on. Lad, you do know how to recognize treasures. No wonder you swallowed the innate Earth Element Energy Essence, leaving no chance for anyone else. Zhang Yi stared at Wu Qi with a little anger. Grinning coldly, he said, Good. Fortunately, His Majesty has prepared for this. Before leaving, His Majesty told me to kill you if I can, and it will be best if I can snatch back the Black Dragon Spirit Ring. If I can't kill you, I'll use this precious treasure to exchange for the Empress legacy. While grinning coldly, Zhang Yi flipped his hand, and an 8-colored beam shot out from his palm, falling abruptly into the middle of the room. A hazy and auspicious light enveloped the entire room, as a chariot pulled by 8 horses slowly emerged amidst the auspicious light. The chariot had a simple and elegant design, and its body was made of some unknown material that was neither gold, jade, iron, nor stone. However, it had a glossy appearance, and was faintly shining with all sorts of glows from the sun, the moon and the stars. The 8 horses were only about 3 feet tall, and they looked like living creatures. They were galloping at top speed, looking extraordinary. The body of the chariot was simple and elegant, measuring about 6 feet in both width and length. A large canopy was placed on top of the chariot, with jade necklaces dangling down from it. Countless layers of auspicious lights were intertwined on the surface of the chariot, which contained countless restrictive spells. Looking at the chariot with naked eyes, one could see countless restrictive spells flashing and vanishing like a meteor shower. It made Wuxia feel a sharp pain in his eyes, as he could not see how many restrictive spells there were in the chariot. A vast, ancient and dignified aura came rushing at his face, as if there was a mighty god standing before everyone, waiting for their worship. Vaguely, loud cheers could be heard coming from the chariot, as if millions of people were worshipping and cheering for the chariot. An enormous power of faith was coiling around the chariot. It was shockingly strong, and when Wuqi's divine will touched it, he immediately had a terrible feeling that his soul was about to be crushed. Zhang Yi, what the hell are you doing? What is this thing? He was taken aback, and nearly cried out. This chariot was too shocking. Judging from its ancient appearance, its majestic aura, the auspicious light from the restrictions, the enormous willpower, and the indistinct cheers of the people, this should be an emperor's artifact of virtue. It was definitely an emperor's artifact of virtue, and it was definitely an ancient emperor who had incredible strength and had achieved immeasurable results of virtue. Zhang Yi sneered. He looked at Wuqia and said, "This is the Mu King's chariot of 8 horses. Of course, you have no idea who Son of Heaven Mu is, and you have no idea what kind of extraordinary treasure the chariot of 8 horses is. In short, this was His Majesty's treasure of virtue. It possessed boundless might, and its speed was incomparably fast. There were very few people and things in this world that could catch up to this carriage. Are you going to exchange this treasure for the Empress relic?" Staring coldly at Wuqia, Zhang Yi said coldly, "Shui Mengjian, frankly speaking, if I want to deceive you, I will. If I can't, I will use this chariot of 8 horses to exchange for it. Since you are a knowledgeable man, you should know that this is an ancient emperor's item of virtue. Haha, compared to it, this lower-grade spirit item is nothing. Haha." Wuqia looked greedily at the chariot of 8 horses. How could he not know about King Mu of Zhou, son of Heaven Mu? How could he not know about his 8 horses? He was the son of Heaven Mu, who once patrolled the lands to the west and met with the Queen Mother of the West, an ancient god. His chariot was pulled by 8 heavenly horses. The 8 horses were divided into 4 categories. 1 was a treacherous ground, never treading on the ground. 2 were flying feather, surpassing birds. 3 were running night, traveling tens of thousands of miles in the night. 4 were surpassing shadow, traveling under the sun. 5 were surpassing radiance, having a shiny coat. 6 were surpassing light, having 1 form and 10 forms. 7 were soaring mist, riding on clouds. And 8 were supporting wings, having a pair of fleshy wings. They were the famous divine mounts in history, and their names had been completely turned into myths and legends. The son of Heaven Mu, King Mu of Zhou, was also the emperor with the strongest and most mysterious divinity in history. The records and legends about him were just a myth, and not a historical biography. If this chariot of 8 horses was truly created by the son of Heaven Mu, then his myths and legends should be 99% true. Only an idiot would not trade for it. Look at its size, look at its shape, look at its luster. TSK, only an idiot would not trade for such a great treasure. Wuqia laughed wildly, casually pulling out the box made of lacquer and throwing it over to him. After that, he impatiently kept the chariot into the black dragon spirit ring. Needless to say, an item of virtue belonging to an ancient emperor would either possess the aura of the human emperor, or possess an unparalleled overall strength. Otherwise, no one would be able to control it. Wuqia was just a commoner. He did possess the aura of a rascal, a thief, or a fugitive. However, as for the aura of the human emperor, it might not match with him even after 100 lifetimes. With his current cultivation base, he was not even a heaven immortal, let alone controlling an extraordinary treasure like this. Nevertheless, Wuqia was not worried at all. If he could not even control an item of virtue, the scroll of stealing would not be the scroll of stealing. If it were some other powerful innate magical treasures or various immortal items, which could only be controlled by someone with a formidable overall strength, Wuxia would not be able to do anything about it. However, although it looked like an item of virtue was the most difficult to control, it was actually the easiest to master. After keeping the chariot of 8 horses into the black dragon spirit ring, Wuxia was so happy that his eyes narrowed into 2 lines. Zhang Yi took over the box, gave Wuxia a deep look, nodded his head and said, "All right, I'll leave the chariot of 8 horses to you. Take good care of it, along with the black dragon spirit ring. When the mighty army of Daqing crushes Ji City, you'll have to hand them over to me. His Majesty has said that these treasures will only be temporarily kept in your hands. You're on your own now." Su Qin sneered and said, "Junior brother, you're looking down on your senior brother by saying that. Why don't you say that the mighty army of Great Yin crushes Xianyang City?" Zhang Yi smiled, then turned to Su Qin and said, "Senior brother, why don't we make a bet?" Su Qin's interest was aroused. As he rubbed his palms together and was about to make a bet with Zhang Yi, Wuxia suddenly said coldly, "When the mighty army of Daqing crushes Ji City, I'll definitely find a most remote and desolate place, deep in the mountains, and throw this black dragon spirit ring into it, making it stay in the world forever. After that, I'll immediately slit my own throat and reincarnate. Let's see if you can find the chariot of 8 horses or not." Zhang Yi was stunned, and so was Li Xian. Su Qin was struck dumb for a brief moment. Suddenly he held his stomach and burst out into a wild laughter. "Junior brother Zhang Yi, how could you forget that the most difficult people to deal with under the heaven are not the emperor, not the ministers, not the heroes, but the most difficult people to deal with are these little rascals? Ha ha ha. I suddenly have a premonition that Yingzheng will suffer a great loss in the hands of this little rascal. Do you believe me?" Zhang Yi twitched his lips and stormed out of the room while cursing, disappearing in just a blink of an eye. Li Xian was struck dumb for a moment. Then he shook his head and gave the dog meat in the big clay pot a look with reluctance. After that, he hastily chased after Zhang Yi, transforming into a sword beam and flying away. Wuxia and Su Qin looked at each other and smiled. Putting aside what happened just now, both of them squatted next to the fire pit, scooped up a piece of dog meat that was almost cooked, and began gnawing on it happily. The cold wind was whistling outside the room, but inside the room, it was steaming hot, and the aroma of meat was filling the air. There was also a delicious wine to accompany the meal. This was the joy of life. Neither of them cared about their seniority, and acted like a pair of scoundrel friends who had been together for many years. They drank and played with each other, and eventually finished the whole black dog meat to their heart's content. Su Qin's table manners were extremely unsightly. He even drank up all the soup in the pot, and nearly stuck out his tongue to lick the bottom of the pot. Li Xian, this little fellow, although he is not good at fighting, he is good at shooting arrows from the back. I never expected that dog meat can be cooked so well. Having eaten and drunk to his heart's content, Su Qin lied down on the leather bed without caring about his image, holding his belly and snorting. Wuxia, on the other hand, was lying down on the leather bed with his legs crossed. He was humming a folk song, and complacently pondered over the story between Yingzheng and his empress. However, this leisurely mood was soon broken, as the sonorous ringing of golden bells and jade bells was heard coming from far away in Ji City. The banquet of Great Yin Imperial Palace had begun. Su Qin and Wuxia had no choice but to hug their round bellies. Helplessly, they set up their sword beams in the backyard and sped into the city. Both of them were busy changing their clothes in midair, and when they arrived at the entrance of the Imperial Palace, they had already changed into the splendid imperial dress. Many nobles and ministers of Great Yin dynasty were lining up neatly and entering the imperial city. Su Qin and Wuxia squeezed and squeezed through the crowd, and finally found their acquaintances. Shockingly, Su Qin was the best friend of a group of pedantic scholars from Great Yin Dynasty's Editorial Institute. After he blended into the group of pedantic old men, he quickly became one of them. On the other side, Wuxia found Lu Qingfeng. Both of them exchanged a glance, telling each other that everything was fine. After that, they followed the crowd and walked into the imperial palace. When Wuxia attended the banquet for the first time, he entered the highest hall with the identity of Lu Qingfeng's attendant. But today, as a noble of Great Yan Dynasty who also had the title of duke, Wuxia was given a long narrow table right next to Lu Qingfeng. As Yan Dan and his company had not arrived yet, Wuxia kept looking at the three-tiered dais at the far end of the hall. To his surprise, he saw 5 luxurious long narrow tables inlaid with gold and jade on top of the dais. Behind the tables were 2 large chairs made of white jade, covered with a thick layer of demon beast fur. Right next to Yan Dan's seat, there were a few other simple and unadorned long narrow tables placed in order. During the imperial banquet of Great Yan Dynasty, all the guests, no matter it was the emperor or the others, would kneel behind the long narrow tables. This was the etiquette of Great Yan Dynasty. However, the chairs behind these 5 long narrow tables were very different from the etiquette of Great Yan Dynasty, and no one knew who they were prepared for. On the second tier of the dais, where there were only 5 people, including Jing Ku, were seated, but now over 30 luxurious tables were added. A group of palace maids and eunuchs were bustling around these newly added tables. There were even a few strong and burly eunuchs, panting as they carried 2 slices of raw pig and lamb, carefully placing them on these tables. They were the raw pig and lamb, with fresh blood still dripping down from them. Wuxia stared blankly at those large pieces of meat, and could not help but cry out in shock. Could it be that there are some people who eat raw meat and drink blood here today? How come even raw meat is served here? The rest of the people in the hall had also noticed that the situation on the dais was different today. Their eyes were filled with shock as they stared at these pieces of meat. A strange aura had enveloped the entire hall. Some of the influential members and ministers were glancing around anxiously, especially those ministers who made the bet with Jing Ku and Gao Jianli in the drill ground this morning. Their faces were filled with an aura of death, and their bodies were shivering. There were also some ministers who had a pitiful expression on their faces, looking at Prince of Ren, Yan Xianchen, and the other 8 princes who sat at the front of all the ministers. However, Yan Xianchen himself had an unsightly expression on his face, so how could he pay any attention to these henchmen? The battle in the drill ground was just a bet, but it had thoroughly exposed the division of power in the imperial court of Great Yan Dynasty. Many people had a premonition that a storm was coming. While Wuxia was looking at these ministers, he suddenly saw Yu Wendi and Yu Qianqian sitting behind 2 tables that were placed next to each other, talking in a low voice with a strange smile on their faces. The smiles on their faces made Wuxia feel very strange. Chapter 206. The second one was a skinny old man, He Qianqiu, the master of the immortal cliff of Meng Mountains. His territory was only 5 million miles wide, but most of the demons and devils in the immortal cliff were flying creatures, so half of the airspace of Meng Mountains was under the control of He Qianqiu's disciples and disciples. He Qianqiu had just broken through the realm of mid-stage nascent divinity, so his cultivation base was much weaker than Xiong Wanling. However, as a crane he could fly in the air. Therefore, if they were to engage in a real battle, the result would be a draw. Wuxia picked up the wine cup and took a sip without making a sound. The way the father and daughter addressed Yan Dan and his men was very interesting. They were addressing Yan Dan and his men by their name. Clearly in their hearts, they did not take the emperor, crown prince, princess, and the others seriously. They were very confident, but where did they get this confidence from? Yu clan was just the chief editor of Great Yan Dynasty. Although it was a noble clan, it did not have any real power. The third one was a short and stout old man, Wuyu. He had the bloodline of the bald owl, an ancient ferocious bird, and had a cultivation base close to peak stage nascent divinity realm. He was only slightly weaker than Weining Dragon King of Longyuan River. Although he was short and stout, he had an amazing cultivation base. However, it was very difficult for the bald owl to mix with other rare birds. Therefore, Wuyu was a loner without any offspring. However, he had taken in many ferocious birds, built the Thousand Bone Cave, and occupied the other half of the airspace of Meng Mountains. In addition to these 4 strange-looking men, the last woman was not tall, not short, not fat, not thin, not fat, not thin. She was too fat, too thin, too thin. She walked like a weak willow in the wind, a fragrance wafting from her body. She smiled before she spoke, and was as beautiful as a young girl in a romantic dream. But it was not right to call her a teenage girl. She had the body and appearance of a stunning beauty, but the charm she exuded was something even 1,000 experienced brothels could not compare to. Yandan gave the lady a helpless look, smiled bitterly and said, "Fox King, please spare Yandan's ministers. How could they withstand your mercy?" Suddenly, golden bells and jade chimes rang in unison, and the musicians on both sides of the main hall played drums. Accompanied by the vigorous and powerful court drum music, Yandan and his entourage, surrounded by many eunuchs and palace maids, strode out from the back of the hall. In the main hall, many nobles and officials knelt down to pay their respects to Chi-Chi, shouting, "Long live His Majesty!" Yandan, whose face was glowing with health, seemed to be in high spirits. He raised his hands and said with a smile, "Gentlemen, please rise. There's no need to be overly courteous." While chuckling, the woman abruptly opened her mouth and said, "People, is Su Mayor beautiful?" As soon as Yandan's words left his mouth, everyone's expression changed. The last man was 8 feet tall. He was even thinner than the Qin Qing Shui that Wuxia had seen before. He was practically a human-shaped stick. His skin was purple gold in color, and under his skin, there were faintly visible scales. His eyes were like those of a cat, narrowed into a thin line under the strong lamplight in the main hall, revealing the cold-blooded and merciless characteristic of cold-blooded animals. He never looked at anyone, but kept glancing at the wine utensils, silver, and all kinds of metal utensils in the main hall. He seemed to be drooling with greed. The fourth man was a skinny middle-aged man, a golden armor devourer, an ancient beast who cultivated into a human form. The golden armor devourer loved to eat all kinds of metals, and devoured the energies contained in them. His body was extremely tough. Although he had just broken through to the nascent divinity realm 1,300 years ago, with his incredibly strong fleshly body, he was able to fight against Wanying Dragon King, a peak-stage nascent divinity expert. He had the dominion of 50 million miles of forests and woods in Meng Mountains, and had built a great foundation in the bottomless dark abyss of Meng Mountains, with countless demons and devils serving under his command. After waiting for all the influential officials and ministers of Great Yen to pay their respects to Yandan once again, only then did Yandan smilingly introduce these 5 strange-looking men and women to the crowd. Right after the lady walked out from behind Mai, her pink eyes, which were as deep as 2 pools of water, gave everyone a quick glance. Immediately, 99% of the few thousand influential officials and ministers of Great Yin Dynasty in the main hall lost their composure and fell to the ground with a thud. These people stared at the lady with an unbearable expression, while gulping and swallowing saliva. Some even had their lower bodies bulging, staring at her with eyes that seemed to be shooting flames. It looked like they could not wait to pounce on her, put their arms around her, and have sex with her on the spot. Wu Qi smiled and nodded at her, then turned to look at the rest of the people standing behind Yandan. After introducing these 5 formidable demons who occupied a region in Meng Mountains, Yandan smiled and said, 3 days ago, Yandan had burned the imperial decree and offered it to the heaven, worshipping 5 demon kings as the imperial advisors of Great Yin Dynasty. From now on, 5 demon kings are connected with the fate of Great Yin Dynasty. We will live or die together. The crown prince of Great Yin Dynasty, Yan Qijuan, the prime minister of Inner Palace, Ma Yi, and 12 inner ministers clad in the bright red robe of eunuchs. Apart from these people, there were also 5 extraordinary people, 4 men and 1 woman, who were dressed very differently from the people of Great Yin Dynasty. Their expressions were relaxed, and their aura was restrained within their bodies, not leaking out at all. Yet, they gave one a feeling that they were like nuclear warheads that could explode with a frightening lethality at any time. At this moment, both father and daughter were looking at the throne on the dais at the same time. Yu Qianqian murmured with a surprised tone, "This is strange. Apart from Yan Qijuan and Yan Zixuan, who else can sit side by side with Yandan? I think only Mod and Su Qin are qualified to do so in Great Yin Dynasty, right?" Fortunately, Wu Qi had another ability, lip reading. He bowed his head, peeking at Yu Qianqian and Yu Wendy from the corner of his eyes, who were whispering to each other in a far distance, carefully analyzing the movements of their lips, combined with the subtle changes in their expressions and the glances that were darting around. Wuxia was able to understand what they were saying with 100% certainty. On top of that, there was a layer of faint ripple of restrictive barrier around Yu Wendy and Yu Qianqian. Wuxia reckoned that they were wearing some treasures that could isolate divine will from probing. Under such circumstances, it would be very strenuous to eavesdrop on the conversation between father and daughter using divine will. Standing behind the old man was an old man with a strange appearance. The old man had a very long neck, and his body was very fat. His body was round like a meatball, but his limbs were thin and long, looking like a meatball with 4 thin matchsticks stuck in it. It gave him a very strange look. The meatball-like body of the old man kept expanding and shrinking, while the surrounding air was constantly being sucked into his body. Then, accompanied by the whistling of the wind, the air was sprayed out from his body. The first man was Xiong Wanling, the lord of Black Wind Gorge in Meng Mountains. He was the demon king who ruled over the forest 30 million miles around Black Wind Gorge in Meng Mountains. He was an almighty cultivator of nascent soul and divine transformation realm, with a cultivation base of mid-stage nascent divinity nearly breaking through to late stage. The two brothers, Xiong Jin and Xiong Yin, were the grandsons of Xiong Wanling, while Xiong Qing and his brothers were the sons of his grandsons. There was a gap of several generations between them. There were at least over 3,000 demon bears from Black Wind Gorge, secretly serving in various government offices of Great Yin Dynasty. Their numbers were especially high among the swallows and palace guards. Among all the demon beasts in Meng Mountains, Xiong Wanling was the demon king who had the closest cooperation with Great Yin Dynasty. Following the crowd, Wuxia rose to his feet and sat down on the mat. Curiously, he looked at the group of people who stood behind Yan Dan on the dais. The grand hall was densely covered with all kinds of restrictive spells, which effectively blocked the probing of divine will. Wuxia's divine will was different from ordinary cultivators. It was nourished by the innate energies of 5 elements, and was born with the power of thunder tribulation. As a result, it was born with all kinds of magical abilities. Thus, these restrictive spells could not block his probing. However, a restrictive spell was a restrictive spell, and it was still too strenuous for him to use his divine will to eavesdrop on the conversation of others amidst so many restrictive spells. Wuxia's heart twitched, and a flame of evil flame suddenly rose from his lower abdomen. Before the flame of evil could begin to wreak havoc, the 7 holy deities and devils had already rushed out from his spiritual ocean, swallowing the flame of evil. Suddenly, the figures of the 7 deities and devils became much clearer, singing and dancing while cheering and roaring in Wuxia's body. Then Wuxia pressed his palm onto Lu Qingfeng's back, sucking away the flame of evil desire that suddenly burst out from his body, and fed it to the 7 holy deities and devils. After all, Wuxia only had a thread of his nascent divinity, and he did not transform his entire soul into a nascent divinity that could leave his body and roam freely. However, none of the other influential members in the Grand Hall had the ability to protect their mind like Wuxia did. Apart from Yan Xianchen, who had a profound cultivation base and was able to keep a steady mind, all the others had their faces blushed. Chi-Chi snorted. There were even a few hundred ministers and nobles who bent their waists and leaped to their feet, hastily walking out of the Grand Hall to change their clothes. The sweet cry of the girl had caused these ministers and nobles to lose their virginity at the same time, making them embarrass themselves on the spot. Needless to say, the 5th girl was Su Meier. She was the direct descendant of the ancient 9-tailed heavenly fox, with a cultivation base of mid-stage nascent divinity realm, and she had already grown 6 tails. She had countless demon girls, including fox demons, flower demons, tree demons, and many other demon girls. Over 70% of the brothels in Great Yin Dynasty were occupied by these demon girls from the Enchanting Palace. Not only were the purses of those men who visited the brothels in high spirits plundered by these demon girls, even their young energies had contributed greatly to the improvement of the cultivation base of these demon girls from the Enchanting Palace. Standing next to this burly man was an old man with white hair and a body that looked like an ancient pine tree. The old man had a pair of dark green eyes that looked like a pair of supreme-grade emeralds. He had a huge frame but was very skinny. A white robe draped over his body, making him look even more skinny, as if he could be blown away by the wind. The old man's steps were steady and light, as if his toes could never touch the ground. He followed closely behind Yandan and entered the grand hall. Raising his head, Wuxia gave Yu Wendy and Yu Qianqian an eerie glance with his eyes as sharp as lightning bolts. Both father and daughter had a quick reaction, as they immediately sensed that Wuxia was looking at them again. With a straight face, Yu Qianqian tilted her head up proudly and looked at the gold-plated patterns on the ceiling. Meanwhile, Yu Wendy smilingly raised up his wine cup and gave a toast to Wuxia from a distance. Wuxia also raised up his empty wine cup and gave a toast to Yu Wendy. After that, he picked up his empty wine cup and made a gesture of drinking the wine. Among the four men, one of them was a middle-aged burly man. He stood nearly 15 feet tall, taller than the rest of the men around him. His skin was dark, and his face was covered with thick black hair. When he walked, the grand hall was trembling slightly. His eyes shone with a bizarre golden hue, and a wild heat could be sensed amidst the coldness in his eyes. An endless power was hidden in his enormous body. Just by looking at his body, Wuxia instinctively felt that he could easily lift up a great mountain. Amidst the sound of footsteps, Jingku, Gao Jianli, Qin Wuyang, and Tian Guang led a group of 20 to 30 men and women into the grand hall, each with different looks and appearances, and took their seats on the second level of the dais. Meanwhile, Yandan and his company had also taken their seats on the highest level of the dais. Su Meier smiled again. Then, the expression on her seductive face turned solemn, and a strong cold aura burst out from her body. In an instant, she had transformed from a seductive girl who could topple all living beings into a pure, holy, and inviolable saint lady. Her cold and dignified gaze swept across the crowd. The bodies of all the influential nobles, who were still harboring lustful thoughts just a moment ago, trembled, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads. It was so cold that their bodies kept shivering, and the flame of desire in their bodies had long vanished without a trace. Yu Wendy narrowed his eyes and looked thoughtfully at the dais. He shook his head lightly and said in a low voice, "Let's wait and see first. Let's wait and see. This is really interesting, really interesting. The reaction of Yandan and Lao Ai has exceeded my expectation. What will they do next? Are they really going to exert all their strength and fight a life-and-death battle with that man from Daqin dynasty?" Princess Zhonglo, with her back shrouded in 5-colored divine rays, was winking at Wuxia and snickering at him. She kept showing her teeth and brandishing her claws at Wuxia, and she was just short of jumping down from the dais and playing with Wuxia. She was the happiest person when Wuxia won in the drill ground today. Wuxia had forcibly formed his Jin Dan with the mystic technique of stealing energy, and his cultivation base had caught up with Princess Zhongli's. It made Princess Zhonglu feel an indescribable joy. Chapter 207. On the dais, the 5 demon kings remained motionless. However, on the second dais, the group of 20 to 30 great demons who stood side by side with Jingku and the others had unleashed an enormous demonic aura, which blanketed the entire grand hall. The demonic aura that felt like a corporeal substance pervaded the grand hall, causing the members of Great Yin Imperial Clan, nobles, and ministers to feel their bodies tighten. Their bodies were drenched in cold sweat, and they dropped to their knees in terror. Sitting on the dais, Yandan was smiling as he looked at the members of Great Yin Imperial Clan and ministers, who kept quiet out of fear. A fierce gleam that was as sharp as a blade flashed in his eyes. "I don't care what you, the ministers of Great Yin Dynasty, have in mind what you are plotting behind the scenes, whether you are coveting the throne of Yandan, whether you are plotting something against the world of Great Yin Dynasty." When the terrifying strength that could easily destroy the lives of everyone was revealed, all the proud sons of the heavens, all the sect masters of the noble clans, all the high and mighty officials, all of them had to obediently kneel down and bow their heads in submission. Great Yin Dynasty can only have one supreme emperor, and that is Yandan. You stand high and mighty in front of the people. You can call the wind and summon the rain in Great Yin Dynasty, and with just a word from you, you can decide the life and death of millions of people. But you must remember that it is Yandan who gave you the status, the power, and the position. He is the emperor, and you are his ministers. This is your duty. All of a sudden, Yin Dan burst into a loud laughter. Behind his back, a grayish-white spirit light towered into the sky. Amidst the grayish-white spirit light that contained the transformations of life and death, the ever-changing aura of life and death, an ancient-looking and heavy wheel, emanating an immense cold breeze, slowly rose up. The wheel measured 60 feet in diameter and 10 feet in thickness. Its entire body was engraved with countless ancient, profound, and unrecognizable runes. 6 lines of dim light divided the wheel into 6 equal parts. Vaguely, patterns of humans, ghosts, animals, and many other strange creatures could be seen looming on its surface. Wuxia gave it a quick glance, and in an instant, he associated it with one of the famous treasures in Scroll of Stealing. The Disc of Heavenly Tao Transmigration was an acquired spirit treasure crafted by a group of almighty experts, and it possessed an unimaginably magical power. To the demons, the Heavenly Tao Reincarnation Disc was extremely useful. The bodies of fiendish demons were born with evil and ferocious qi that could not be tolerated by the heavens and earth. This was especially true when one was a fiendish demon. It was unknown how much evil they had committed in their previous lives before they were reincarnated as a fiendish demon. With the evil karma from their previous lives, the power of their thunder tribulation was comparable to that of those unlucky Longbow Kingdom people. The power of the thunder tribulation was extremely strong, and only 1 in 10,000 demons could survive it. However, once Yin Dan activated the Heavenly Tao Reincarnation Disc, the demons would have a chance to enter the cycle of reincarnation once again. They would be able to erase the karma of their past lives, allowing their cultivation path to be much smoother. All the demons and devils that cultivated from beasts were cruel and brutal by nature. Their minds were unstable, and when they encountered the inner devil or the heavenly devil tribulation, their primordial spirits would be easily devoured by the devils, and they would suffer a great calamity. The Heavenly Tao Reincarnation Disc could allow demons to enter the Tao of Reincarnation and experience the 3,000 red dust. It could stabilize the demons' Tao hearts and prevent them from being affected by external factors. With the protection of the Heavenly Tao Reincarnation Disc, the demons and devils would have a great Tao that could lead them straight to immortality. No wonder the 5 demon kings had joined Great Yin Dynasty. And no wonder a few reclusive demons and devils had become the secret sinecures of Great Yin Dynasty. Today, Yin Dan had even burned the imperial edict to the heaven, officially worshipping the 5 demon kings, and becoming the imperial advisor of Great Yin Dynasty. With this, the demon kings and the fate of Great Yin Dynasty were connected, and they could be strengthened by the energy of the human emperor of Great Yin Dynasty. Every word and action of theirs would be strengthened by the faith of the billions of people in Great Yin Dynasty. As long as they could protect the safety of the people of Great Yin Dynasty, they would be protected by the virtues. For these formidable demon kings, the thing they feared the most was the heaven immortal tribulation that would befall them on the day they formed their nascent divinity. It was extremely difficult for demons and devils to attain the righteous fruit. Among 1 million demons and devils, not even one could survive the heaven immortal tribulation. However, as long as they were protected by the virtues of Great Yin Dynasty, and were strengthened by the faith of billions of people, the power of the heaven immortal tribulation would be reduced to nothing. As long as their cultivation base reached a certain level, they could easily attain the righteous fruit of heaven immortal. With the help of the Heavenly Tao Reincarnation Disc, and the protection from the fortune of Great Yin Dynasty, the 5 demon kings could only obediently become the imperial advisors of Great Yin Dynasty, the loyal fighters of Great Yin Dynasty. With the help of these 5 demon kings and the millions upon millions of demon descendants under their command, the internal strife of Great Yin Dynasty was nothing but a joke in Yin Dan's eyes. When Weining Dragon King attacked the Qin army, he had easily gathered millions of great demons from Longyuan River. How many demons and devils did these 5 demon kings, who shared the same fame as him, have under their command? Before such an army of demons and devils, no matter how ambitious a hero or hero in Great Yin Dynasty was, he or she would have to obediently kowtow before Yin Dan, throwing away the tiny bit of ambition in his or her heart into the latrine. What a great strategy! Looking at the smiling face of Yin Dan, Wuxia could not help but praise him. It looked like Yin Dan had also prepared countless trump cards. Just this disc of heavenly Tao reincarnation, which was crafted by imitating the 6 paths of reincarnation, had a power not weaker than the cauldron of Yu. It would not be easy for Ing Zheng to compete with great Yin dynasty. The disc of heavenly Tao reincarnation was one of the top acquired spirit treasures found in the Scroll of Stealing. Yin Dan's enormous aura mixed with the demon aura of those great demons, suppressing all the courtiers in the Grand Hall, making them not dare to move. The faces of Yin Xianqian and the others turned ashen. Cold sweat kept dripping down from their chins, drenching the carpet before them. Their minds were blank as they stared at Yin Dan, who had the huge disc hovering above his head. They had no idea where this huge disc of heavenly Tao reincarnation came from. As the strongest figure among the 8 governors of Great Yin Dynasty, even Yin Xianqian had no idea that Yin Dan actually owned an acquired spirit treasure like this. Inside the huge disc of heavenly Tao reincarnation, 2 bright lights of gray and white were blinking vaguely. When the bright lights moved, the bodies of all the people in the Grand Hall twitched, as if their souls were about to be crushed and shattered by the bright lights. At the same time, it was as if there were countless frightening existences rushing out from the 6 paths and devouring their souls. Under such a pressure, none of the civil and military officials in the imperial court dared to have any other thoughts. Yin Dan smiled a very happy smile. He said softly, "Over the years, Yin Dan has been in a secluded cultivation, seeking for a breakthrough. Therefore, he has handed over the power of the imperial court to the 8 governors. Recently, Yin Dan has broken through the bottleneck, and his cultivation base has improved at a tremendous pace. Not only has his nascent soul attained mastery, but he will soon step into the nascent divinity realm with the help of the spirit treasure, truly achieving the Tao of immortality and living a free and unfettered life. Therefore, the system of supervising the imperial court by the 8 governors is no longer needed." Taking a deep breath, Yin Dan said, "Mai, draft up a decree. From today onwards, I will personally supervise the imperial court. All government orders without my personal signature and seal are considered as arbitrary orders. All the people of Great Yin are not allowed to obey them. The power of Great Yan's 3 prime ministers and 9 ministers, as well as many government offices, will be taken back. All the ministers will report directly to Yin Dan. From today onwards, the 8 governors will be completely dismissed." The few thousand ministers in the Grand Hall answered in unison, "We will obey your Majesty's decree." Yin Dan nodded his head satisfyingly. He stuck out his chest and said in a cold voice, "In Great Yin, there is a mortal enemy named Daqin. All the ministers do not need to know the origin of Daqin. They only need to know that Daqin is the mortal enemy of Great Yin. In this world, if Great Yin exists, there will be no Daqin. If Daqin exists, there will be no Great Yin. The army of Daqin has appeared in Ming Mountains, less than 400,000 miles away from the border of Great Yin. Therefore, I've decided to prepare the army and fight a life-and-death battle with Daqin." Abruptly, Yin Dan rose to his feet and said in a cold voice, "The posts of imperial judges of front, back, left, and north will be abolished, and they will be replaced by the 4-field headquarter of north, south, east and west. They will be responsible for supervising the vassal kingdoms in the 4 directions, organizing their armies and fighting a life-and-death battle with Daqin. The former 4 imperial judges of front, back, left, and north will be replaced by the chief supervisors of the 4-field headquarter of Great Yin Dynasty. They will be promoted to the positions of east, west, north and south generals. Their positions are comparable to the chief generals of Great Yin Dynasty, and they will be responsible for the preparation of provisions and armaments, the mobilization of soldiers, the maintenance of city defenses, and the strict inspection of military law and discipline." Yin Dan snorted coldly and said with a stern voice, "As long as Daqin is not wiped out, the 4-field headquarter will never be disbanded. All the vassal kingdoms under the heaven must obey the orders of the chief supervisors of the 4-field headquarter, according to their territories. They will mobilize all the soldiers and manpower in their kingdom, and follow Great Yan's army to launch a punitive expedition against Daqin." Wuxia narrowed his eyes, gently poking Lu Qingfeng's back with his finger. Lu Qingfeng's body tensed up. He was so nervous that he almost burst out laughing. The four-field headquarter had the power to control all the military resources, manpower, and financial resources of the four vassal kingdoms. This power was much greater than the power of Zhuguozheng. On top of that, the four chief supervisors of the four-field headquarter had the power to enforce the military law, which meant that they could use the military law to punish the monarchs and ministers of the vassal kingdoms. This power was too great to be described with words. After that, Yandan gave out another imperial decree. The chief supervisors of the four-field headquarter were the chief supervisors of the logistics department and the director of military law. Meanwhile, in the four-field headquarter, the ones who were responsible for fighting the Daqin dynasty with real weapons were the other generals. The general of the Westfield headquarter that Lu Qingfeng was in charge of was the chief general of Great Yin dynasty, Fan Yuqi. The main force of the war was the Black Swallow Army, which Fan Yuqi had been secretly training all these years. In short, Fan Yuqi was in charge of marching the army and fighting the war, and Lu Qingfeng was in charge of everything outside the war. The pay, provisions, the mobilization and recruitment of reserve soldiers, even the repair of the city wall, the reorganization of the outposts, the execution of the military law, were all under the responsibility of Lu Qingfeng. As the Westfield headquarter happened to be facing the threat of Qin army, Yandan had given Lu Qingfeng a special authority. In the vassal kingdoms governed by the Westfield headquarter, if any monarch refused to obey his orders, Lu Qingfeng could execute them first and report them later. As long as it was the resources needed by the army, Lu Qingfeng could freely assemble them on the spot. Even if he had to rob all the treasuries of those vassal kingdoms, as long as it was helpful to the war, Lu Qingfeng could make the decision arbitrarily. Lu Qingfeng respectfully walked out of the ranks and received the decree from Ma Yi, which was specially given to him, granting him the right to exercise absolute power. Even the 5 imperial advisors who had just been appointed by Great Yin dynasty would lead countless disciples, sons, and grandsons to follow the army under the command of the Westfield headquarter. Of course, for those small fries, they could never expect the 5 imperial advisors to lend a hand. Only when they were facing a cultivator of Daqin, who possessed a similar overall strength, would they lend a hand. Lu Qingfeng only had the authority to control them, but he didn't have the authority to order them to mobilize and enforce the law. After that, the official imperial decree was issued. The power of Great Yin dynasty, which was once scattered among the 8 princes and even Crown Prince Yan Qijuan, was now fully reclaimed into the hands of Yandan. Without Yandan's personal approval and personal seal, all the orders issued by the various government offices of Great Yin dynasty had lost their legal validity. Under the threat of 5 demon kings and several dozens of great demons, all the influential members and ministers in the Grand Hall bowed their heads and obeyed the orders, not daring to show any dissenting expression. Even Lao Ai, who had just been conferred the title of Prince of Chongqing of Great Yin dynasty, was sitting on the dais. He kept twisting his body, as if there were thorns growing under his buttocks. Under the pressure of 5 demon kings, even this peerless evil man, Lao Ai, seemed to have become much more reserved. Looking at the strange expression on the faces of all his ministers, Yandan could not help but clap his hands and laugh out loud. Come, today is the imperial banquet. My dear ministers, please enjoy yourselves to your heart's content. After a brief moment of pondering, Yandan said in a deep voice, Old Mr. Mo, Old Mr. Su, Old Mr. Sun, and Mr. Han Fei, please come up here and have a drink with me. Mod, Su Qin and Wu Qi were not surprised. However, Han Fei and Old Mr. Sun had shaken Wu Qi and made his body turn stiff, as if countless thunderbolts were running through his body. Old Mr. Sun, could it be Sun Kuang? Chapter 208. Wu Qi shook his head and said in a low voice, The reason why they are called Jin Dan human immortals is that the Jin Dan realm is mainly focused on accumulating energies, and does not require any enlightenment of the heavenly Tao. As long as your fleshly body can withstand it, you will be able to form Jin Dan in the shortest time possible, and improve the cultivation base of Jin Dan realm. Within 1 month, I want you to form Jin Dan, and try your best to improve your Jin Dan realm. Yui rose to his feet, looked at Wuxia indifferently and said, Yue is a military general. A military general only cares about life and death, not right or wrong. The atmosphere in the Grand Hall had become very strange. Some ministers were stealthily glancing at Su Qin, Han Fei, and Sun Kuang from the corner of their eyes. Su Qin, the sour master who spent most of his time in Great Yin Dynasty's editorial institute, had suddenly appeared on the drill ground and made a bet with so many influential officials, which had frightened many people. Out of the blue, he even climbed up the dais and drank with Yin Dan, which had frightened many people even more. Yin Dan looked down at Yue, who was kneeling on one knee. After a long while he said coolly, it was Yusu who came to challenge him, and both of them signed a contract of life and death. Yusu was killed by Duke of Tianyin in a fair duel. Yin Dan said coolly, when Duke of Tianyin was young, he had consumed some spirit herbs, which made his fleshly body as strong as a flood dragon. Therefore, he was able to form his Jin Dan with the help of external pills. Furthermore, he accidentally obtained 2 acquired spirit pearls in the Rare Treasures Conference, which allowed him to kill Yusu. No one caused any mischief in this duel. Do you understand, Yue? As for Sun Kuang and Han Fei, not many people in Great Yin Imperial Court knew them. Seclusion was a very frightening term. With Sun Kuang's prowess in teaching disciples like Li Si and Han Fei, he had lived in seclusion in Great Yin Dynasty for over 2,000 years, and it was not until today that many ministers and nobles in Great Yin Dynasty knew about him. How many disciples had he taught during these 2,000 years? And how many of them could be compared with Li Si and Han Fei? How many people in the imperial court were Sun Kuang's disciples? Xiong Wanling and the other 4 demon kings, who were calm and composed when they first appeared on the stage, as if they did not care about anything, became restless after MOD and Senior Mr. Sun ascended the stage. The 5 demon kings kept casting sidelong glances at MOD and old Mr. Sun, and from time to time, their demonic auras would leak out. Under the threat of the demonic aura, MOD and old Mr. Sun had no choice but to release their auras to contend against them. The officials in the hall suddenly straightened their backs and looked at Wu Qi with schadenfreude. Several eunuchs hurriedly closed the doors of the main hall, blocking the cold wind and snow outside the main hall. However, the cold wind that had already blown into the main hall still circled around the main hall for a while before completely dissipating. The wind blew the candles, and the light and shadows in the main hall swayed. Their auras merged into one, and they actually faintly showed signs of resisting the 5 demon kings. This caused even Wu Qi to be shocked. Abruptly, Jing Ke placed both hands on the wine table and stared at Yue with wide eyes like a tiger that was about to burst into a rage. Gao Jianli grabbed Jing Ke's shoulder and pushed him back into the seat. Meanwhile, Tian Guang pressed his hand on Jing Ke's thigh, using all his strength to prevent him from getting up. Only Qin Wuyang continued to drink and eat as if nothing had happened, as if nothing had anything to do with him. Keep them in the ring. There are energy stones and various materials in it, which you can use to study formations. There are also spirit talismans, which I robbed from the elders of Heavenly Spirit Sect. Many of them are very powerful, and can even kill Earth immortals of nascent soul realm. Be careful when using them. I also robbed all kinds of life-saving spirit pills, so it's always better to carry them with you. Most importantly, there are 15 kilograms of Flood Dragon blood essence in it, and a body-strengthening technique of Flood Dragon clan. Absorb them all within 3 days according to the law. MOD had also created the MO sect, occupying a small area and teaching it to his disciples. From time to time, some influential members of Great Yin would ask him to craft various magical items for their descendants. But who were Sun Kuang and Han Fei? What did they do? What made them qualified to sit on the dais and drink with Yin Dan? Furthermore, they looked so calm and composed. Clearly, they were very familiar with Yin Dan. Both of them were discussing how to improve Lu Qingfeng's cultivation base, and how to ensure that he would not self-detonate and kill himself during the process. All of a sudden, the door of the grand hall was pushed open, and a strong gust of wind brought in a great amount of snowflakes. The cold air brought along a faint smell of blood, as Yue, clad in a heavy black armor and a black cloak, walked into the grand hall with a sword in his hand. Amidst the flickering shadows, a strange smile emerged on Yu Wendy's face, which was caught by Wuxia. If not for someone playing tricks on me, Yusu should not have died, said Yue in a deep voice. Wuxia turned his head and saw a drop of cold sweat trickling down from Wendy's forehead, dripping down from his nose and into his wine cup. Abruptly, Wuxia straightened his body and said with a cold grin, "So, I am the one who deserved to die? Yue, is that what you mean? Your grandson provoked me with a spear, pierced through Wuqia's shoulder, and called Wuxia a rascal, an assassin who stabbed his mother. That was the only impression Wuxia had of Han Fei. No one could imagine that he was actually a monster with incredible intelligence and talent. He raised the wine cup and drank the wine, picked up the chopsticks and ate the meat. His every movement was like a wooden puppet, precise, yet with a trace of stiffness. Su Qin kept chattering beside him, and no one knew what he was talking about. But Han Fei only moved his lips occasionally and said a few words to Su Qin out of courtesy. On the dais, the 5 demon kings, Mod, and Sun Quan, who were fighting with their auras, had retracted their auras. Once a nascent divinity cultivator retracted his aura, he would not be able to release any aura, making him look no different from an ordinary old man. Lu Qingfeng's eyes lit up, as he finally understood what Wuqia meant. A formation master could always challenge an enemy with a higher cultivation base. As long as he could form the Jin Dan, he would be able to construct a formation of 7 stars, 8 trigrams and 9 palaces, which was more than enough to trap an ordinary nascent soul cultivator. Even if he could not kill them, he could at least save his own life. Once an all-out war broke out between Daqin and Great Yan, he would have a greater chance of saving his own life. Once again Yuendi noticed Wuqia. With a smile on his face, he raised up his wine cup and drank the drop of cold sweat together with the wine. What was even more frightening was that when Mod and Sun Quan joined hands, they could faintly fight against the demonic energy unleashed by the 5 demon kings. What kind of cultivation was this? What kind of strength was this? Old Mr. Mod had a great reputation in Great Yan Dynasty, so it was not surprising for him to have such a cultivation base. But what about Sun Quan? An unknown Sun Quan actually possessed the cultivation base of nascent divinity realm. Were there any other unknown and fearsome figures like him? If there were still such fearsome figures hiding in Great Yan Dynasty, how many more of them were there? Lu Qingfeng took the ring and put it on his finger. He asked excitedly, "After refining the flood dragon's blood essence, will I be as invulnerable as a flood dragon?" Wuqia shook his head and said in a low voice, "It's too late. West Headquarter will be the first to face Daqin's army. As the chief supervisor, you are responsible for the logistics and military law of West Headquarter. As the commander-in-chief of Daqin, I will assassinate a man like you first. Without sufficient overall strength, you will be killed in less than 3 days." With great effort, Wuqia suppressed the shock in his heart, then began to steal a glance at Han Fei, who was sitting side by side with Su Qin. Is this the sharp claw of Great Yan hiding in the dark? Occasionally, when Han Fei revealed his horn, it was enough to make Wuqia's muscles tense up, and almost instinctively, he was ready to flee at any time. In fact, Sun Quan was not a threat to Wuqia, and there was no enmity between them. But the overall strength he had shown was too strong, and what he represented was too frightening. Wuqia was like a little rabbit who heard the roar of a ferocious beast, trying to flee out of instinct. Lu Qingfeng covered his face with a wry smile and complained in a low voice, "There are many things to deal with in Imperial Judge Court. These days there are many things to deal with. Fortunately, Chu Yuan and the others are here, and they can help me share some of the burden. After these days, I think I can have some free time to improve my cultivation base and study the arts of heaven patching formation." Even if Mod did not mention it, Wuqia was quite familiar with him. But according to Yan Dan's introduction, old Mr. Sun was indeed Sun Quan, whom Wuqia had guessed. He was a minister of Zhao State during the last years of the Warring States period, and the master of Han Fei and Li Si. He was a subject of Zhao, but no one knew why he had abandoned Zhao and lived in seclusion in Great Yan. "Yusu will not die," said Yue in a deep voice. As a man who knew Sun Quan's background, Wuqia felt his scalp go numb, and cold sweat kept breaking out from all over his body. Wuqia sneered maliciously and said, Sweat and urine are almost the same in composition, the only difference is the place where they flow out. So this fellow is a man who likes to drink urine. Staring coldly at Wendy, Wuqi sighed and said, if you have not done anything wrong, why should you be afraid of Sun Kuang and Han Fei? Editor's yard? Editor's yard? This is the territory of Yu clan. So this old fellow has been hiding in editor's yard all this while? Interesting, interesting. Wuqi just sneered, with a five-colored gleam flickering faintly in his eyes. Yui gave Wuqi a cold glance, then turned to Yan Dan, cupped his fist and said, Your Majesty, please forgive me for returning to the capital without permission. I'll return to the front line now and put down the rebellion. As for Yu Su, I'll bring him to the front line to temper him. Duke of Tianyan, remember, you have one more enemy in Great Yan. Wuqi cursed angrily, relying on his cultivation base of peak stage Jin Dan. Yu Su challenged me, a Xiantian Daoist, with his cultivation base of peak stage Jin Dan. I, Wuqi, am lucky to have forcefully condensed Jin Dan with a mystic technique of stealing energy, and killed him in front of so many people. Yui, could it be that only your family members can kill me, but I can't kill with my blade? Clenching his fists tightly, Wuqi laughed and said, if you don't want to explode into pieces, you'll have to work hard to refine these flood dragon blood essences. Only with a strong enough fleshly body can you withstand the impact of energies and condense Jin Dan. With the overall strength of Jin Dan, the power of the formations you can deploy will be at least dozens of times stronger. And a master of formation can always challenge enemies who are stronger than you. After searching for a while, Wuqi gave Lu Qingfeng 2 storage rings with a large capacity. Yui cupped his fist and bowed to Yan Dan, then spun and strode out of the grand hall. Only a human immortal of Jin Dan realm could achieve such a rapid advancement. With a strong fleshly body that could withstand the impact of energies, one could quickly condense Jin Dan and improve their cultivation base. When one stepped into the realm of nascent soul, one would have to begin to comprehend the heaven and earth, fusing the Tao of heaven and earth into one's nascent soul. Only then would one be able to keep improving his cultivation base. At that point of time, one could still use this evil technique that could improve one's cultivation base rapidly, but if one's foundation was unstable, the consequences would be fatal. After taking 100 steps into the grand hall, Yui knelt down on one knee. He bowed deeply and said with a deep voice, Your Majesty, my youngest son Yu Su has been killed. He picked up the wine cup and gave a toast to Wendy. After that, he turned his head and said to Lu Qingfeng with a low voice, Now that I don't have the overall strength, it will be hard for me to stay in Great Yin Dynasty. West Guarding General, the chief supervisor of Great Yin Dynasty's Westfield headquarters. Are you still a cultivator of respiration tier of Xiantian realm? During the imperial banquet, apart from Yan Dan, who was always calm and confident, perhaps only Princess Zhonglu, who never took anything to heart, was enjoying the food. All the other people, including Wuqi, felt like chewing wax. They ate listlessly, and their eyes kept darting back and forth in the surroundings. Chapter 209. Staring at Yu Yi's back as he walked out of the grand hall, Yan Dan shook his head helplessly. Breathing out a heavy sigh, Yan Dan turned to Wuqi and said, Yui, the minister of Great Yan. Wuqi, the minister of Great Yan. As the monarch of Great Yan, I can't be partial to anyone. Duke of Tianyan Wuqi, you will follow Qingfen to the Westfield headquarters, and you will be responsible for dispatching the military forces of all vassal kingdoms in the West, preparing for the war. I will appoint you as the deputy chief supervisor of Westfield headquarters, and the general of the Westfield headquarters. You take care of yourself. Wuqi did not say anything, but bowed at Yan Dan. This is called not being partial? You are obviously taking Yu Yi's side, and it is his family members who are being rude, yet you want Wuqi to avoid them? This is what you call being partial. Nevertheless, Wuqi also understood that Yan Dan had been taking good care of him. By sending him out of Ji City, avoiding Yui, who was in the middle of a war, and even giving him a military post, he was protecting him. Otherwise, if Wuqi was allowed to stay in Ji City, Yui would have countless ways to plot against him, and it would be impossible to guard against any open or covert attacks. After the disturbance caused by Yui, The 5 demon kings, Mod, and Sun Quan, who were secretly fighting against each other, had retracted their aura, raised their cups, drank wine, and enjoyed the meat like everyone else. Without the frightening pressure unleashed by them, the atmosphere in the grand hall gradually returned to normal. The drumming began to play again, while a large group of dancers drifted out from the back of the hall, singing and dancing in the middle of the hall. Indeed, it was a prosperous and luxurious place with endless enjoyment. Then Wuxia began to murmur to Lu Chengfeng in a low voice. Word by word, he was teaching Lu Chengfeng the essentials of cultivating the body-strengthening technique of Flood Dragon. After all, it was not an easy task for Lu Chengfeng to absorb 15 kilograms of Flood Dragon blood essence in 3 days. The blood essence of Flood Dragons in Black Dragon's spirit ring was the essence of all Flood Dragons that Ing Zheng had killed over the years. Without Wu Qi's detailed guidance, Lu Chengfeng might go astray, while channeling his energy. Before his body could be strengthened, he would become neither a man nor a dragon. That would be a real headache. While the two of them were having a heated discussion, the first batch of dancers had just retreated, and when the second batch of dancers were about to come up, a young man clad in a light cyan official robe, and in high spirits abruptly rose from his seat, and walked to the center of the hall. He bowed to Yan Dan in a loud and clear voice and said, "Your Majesty, I have something to say to Duke of Tianyan Wu Qi." Yan Dan was taken aback. On the platform, Su Qin spat out a mouthful of wine and pointed at the young man. "Mu Yi, what are you doing?" The youngest son of Su Qin, 32 years old, Su Mai, the editor of National History of Great Yin Dynasty's Editing Academy, was a young scholar who spent all day singing about romance and painting. Only the core members of Great Yin Dynasty, such as Yan Dan, knew that Su Mai was also known as the ever-changing Yin and Yang. In some aspects, he was a genius who was even more monstrous than Su Qin. But geniuses were always freaks, and without a doubt, Su Mai was one of them. Su Mai's weirdness lay in the fact that he had a totally different understanding of the ways of the world, and he had offended many of his colleagues in Editing Academy. As one of the noblest civil officials in Great Yin Dynasty, Su Mai would often punch and kick his colleagues, and often curse them with foul language. If not because Su Qin was the chief editor of National History of Editing Academy, Su Mai would have long been kicked out of the imperial court by his colleagues. Su Qin felt a headache when he saw Su Mai, and Yan Dan felt even worse. Laughing dryly, Yan Dan shook his head at Su Qin, then smiled gently at Su Mai and asked, "Mai, do you have anything to say to Duke Tianyin? Hee, both of you are talented young men, and it's a good time for you to get to know each other." Su Mai clapped his hands forcefully, giggled and said, "Your Majesty, my father is also the imperial advisor of Great Yin Dynasty. But all these years, he has been pretending to be ignorant, and has even forgotten the identity of the imperial advisor. Because of that, I have to endure the anger of a bunch of useless fools in the editorial institute. My father has been telling me to keep a low profile, 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 and keep a low profile. Sigh, now that you've asked my father to come up here and drink with you, I don't think he needs to keep a low profile anymore." Yan Dan blinked his eyes quickly, staring at Su Mai, who seemed to have a one-track mind. With a wry smile he said, "Yes. Da Qin is eyeing us like a tiger, and Great Yin Dynasty has to gather all its forces to face the enemy. Mr. Su, as the imperial advisor of Great Yin Dynasty, there's no need for you to hide in the imperial court anymore." Su Mai burst out into a loud laughter. He clapped his hands, then turned to those officials who sat behind you Wendy and said, "Did you hear that? Be more respectful to me in the future. Remember this face of mine, Su Mai. When I was born, I was conferred the title of Marquis. Damn it. I've tolerated all of you for too long." Just like Wu Qi, Su Mai cursed in front of Yan Dan and so many top-notch nobles of Great Yin Dynasty. Su Qin's old face turned red, just like a monkey's butt. Yet Su Mai stuck out his chest proudly, turned to look at Wu Qi and said, "Duke Wu Qi, I have something to discuss with you. Whether you agree or not, you have to agree. In short, my niece has to marry no one but you." Wu Qi was struck dumb. No one but Wu Qi? Lu Chengfeng turned to look at Wu Qi with a shocked expression. lowered his voice and murmured, "You've offended a girl from Su clan?" On the dais, Princess Zhonglu had her eyes fixed on Wuqi. A murderous gleam flickered in her eyes like the edge of a sword. When she saw the blank and shocked expression on Wuqi's face, Princess Zhonglu knitted her brows and pondered for a brief moment. Immediately, the murderous gleam in her eyes grew stronger, and she fixed her gaze on Su Mai like a mad she-wolf. Su Qin even slapped on the table and cried out, "My, what nonsense are you talking about? What nonsense are you talking about? Your niece? Who are you talking about?" Su Mai tilted his head up, laughed complacently and said, "Of course it's little Su. She is 14 years old now, and it's time for her to get married. I'll make the decision here and marry little Su to Duke of Tianyan. With that, Duke of Tianyan won't be able to offend Princess Zhonglu. Ha, among all the young men of Great Yan Dynasty, which one of them can surpass me in terms of talent, character, appearance? If it's Princess Zhonglu, she'll marry no one but me." Su Qin sat stiffly on his knees on the dais. Looking at his expression, it seemed like he really wanted to strangle Su Mai right now. Yan Dan's body was shivering. He really wanted to turn his head and let out a wild laugh, but as the monarch of Great Yan Dynasty, he had to keep a straight face and hold back his laughter. Jing Ku, Gao Jianli, Tian Guang, and the others stared at Su Mai as if they were looking at a ghost. Suddenly, Gao Jianli shook his head lightly and murmured under his breath, "Old Mr. Su Qin is a great man, but why is his youngest son an idiot? By marrying his youngest niece to Wuqi, does that mean Wuqi can't marry a princess? This is indeed a great strategy, an excellent strategy." Tian Guang said coldly, "This is the so-called drastic measures, a great strategy indeed." Initially, Yan Dan could still hold back his laughter, but when he heard Tian Guang's indescribably cold joke, he suddenly burst out into a wild laughter. All the ministers and generals in the grand hall stared at the complacent Su Mai with a dumbfounded expression. One after another, they bowed their heads, covered their faces with their sleeves, and started giggling. Yu Wendi and Yu Qianqian had a strange smile on their faces, bowing their heads and giggling as well. From the corner of their eyes, they were sneaking glances at Su Mai, who stood proudly in the center of the grand hall. Wuqi shook his head helplessly. He rose to his feet, cupped his fist and bowed deeply to Su Qin, and said, "Old Mr. Wuqi doesn't have any designs on your youngest granddaughter." Wuqi breathed out a long sigh, turned to Su Mai and said, "Su Mai, Grand Marquis Su, why does Wuqi want to marry your youngest niece? Have you asked your father about this? Have you asked your niece's father, who is also your elder brother, what does he think about this?" With a complacent expression, Su Mai took out a fan and slowly fanned himself, then said complacently, "First, why do you want to marry my youngest niece?" "Because my Su clan has proposed to you. With the mighty reputation of my father, if he wants to marry my daughter, who would dare to refuse?" Su Mai chuckled and continued, "Second, all these years, my father has never paid any attention to the affairs of the clan. All my elder brothers have been wholeheartedly cultivating in seclusion, studying the Tao of Yin and Yang transformation. Therefore, all the affairs of the clan are taken care of by me alone. It's just marrying my youngest niece. Of course I can make the decision." Wuqi clenched his teeth tightly and kept shaking his head. He did not even have the strength to laugh. This Su Mai might be a genius, but he was a simple-minded genius. For a man like him, there was no way to be serious with him. Wuqi did not even have the mood to get angry with him. He just shook his head and sighed, then returned to his seat. On the dais, Princess Zhonglu stared at Su Mai with a strange look in her eyes, then cried out coldly, "Su Mai, why should I marry you? Even if your youngest niece wants to marry Wuqi, putting aside whether he wants to marry her or not, why should I marry you when Wuqi marries your youngest niece?" Su Mai turned to look at Princess Zhonglu with surprise, then asked, "If you don't marry me, who else can Princess marry? Apart from Wuqi, who else in Great Yan Dynasty can be more handsome than Mai? Who else can be more talented than Mai? He has an elegant demeanor, looks and talent, and comes from an excellent family. He is matchless. If Princess doesn't marry me, who else can she marry?" Princess Zhonglu breathed out a heavy sigh, then grabbed a wine pot and gulped down half a liter of fine wine. When facing a man like Su Mai, Even the arrogant Princess Zhonglu had lost her temper. Complacently, Su Mai clamored. In the past, because of my father, I had to keep a low profile. I couldn't expose the background of my Su clan. I couldn't brag that my father is the imperial advisor of Great Yin Dynasty. And I couldn't brag that I'm already a marquis of Great Yin Dynasty when I was born. Therefore, I, Su Mai, kept a low profile, and didn't want to expose my talents and knowledge in front of anyone. He breathed out a deep sigh and said, "Since it was His Majesty who exposed my father's identity today, don't blame me for acting in such a high-profile manner. Let me make it clear today, apart from Duke of Tianyin who can compose a beautiful poem and draw a beautiful painting, all the young men of Great Yin Dynasty are just a pile of trash in my heart. Apart from me, none of them are worthy of Princess Zhonglu." Wuxia raised his head and gave Princess Zhonglu a smile. Princess Zhonglu winked at Wuxia in a charming manner. Both of them kept exchanging glances with each other, neither of them taking Su Mai seriously. Upon seeing the current situation, Yan Dan and Su Qin both breathed out a sigh at the same time, while Su Qin, whose face was flushed with shame, was about to rise to his feet and scold Su Mai. A clear and sonorous voice suddenly rang out. "Brother Mai, you're wrong. Do you really think there is no one capable in the imperial court of Great Yin Dynasty? Princess Zhonglu is a celestial being. How can a scholar like you be worthy of Princess Zhonglu?" A young man clad in a Kirin battle robe walked slowly out from the ranks. He did not have an outstanding appearance, but he had a ferocious expression, and was shrouded in a murderous aura. Right after this young man rose to his feet, someone else rose from the seats and said, "Tiger Qin, Idiot Su, Princess Zhonglu, none of you are worthy of her." A series of heavy footsteps rang out. A young man who stood nearly 10 feet tall and looked like an iron tower strode out from the ranks. He dropped to his knees before the dais and said, "Your Majesty, Fan Jinqi is willing to be the husband of Princess Zhonglu." Wuqi gazed at these three men coldly. While he was about to say something, the five-colored divine ray behind Princess Zhongli's back suddenly rolled and rolled. A thunderbolt came crashing down from the ceiling of the grand hall, smashing heavily onto the three men's bodies. The electric arcs were blinding, and the thunderclaps were deafening. The three men howled miserably and fell to the ground. The grand hall was thrown into chaos. Chapter 210. Clenching his jaws tightly, Wuqi fished out 100 heavy ballistae from the Black Dragon spirit ring. They were the armor-piercing ballistae which Zheng kept in the ring, and were specially made by Great Qin. They had the power to pierce through the body of nascent soul demon beasts. Using his divine will, he made the ballistae hover in midair, locking onto the coach of Yu clan that was approaching slowly from afar. Suddenly he changed his tone and shouted, "Tonight, Yu clan had paid the price for their nobility and detachment." Noiselessly, Wuqi sprung out from underground. Like a ghost, he lightly attached himself to the bottom of the coach. He pressed his left ear against the bottom of the coach, and immediately he could hear the voices of Yu Wendi and Yu Qianqian clearly. Wuqi felt his heart was twisting. What Yu Wendi said was destined to become a reality in the future. Yu Wendi smiled reservedly. He chuckled, then said in an indifferent tone, "I've been plotting for over 100 years, using Wei Merchant to make a few cracks on the impenetrable wall of Great Yin Dynasty. But before I could show my talent, the situation was already messed up by Wuqi. Since this young man has ruined my plan, I should find some trouble for him." Yu Wendi said proudly, "That's the principle. All vassal kingdoms will no longer exist, and the monarchs of those vassal kingdoms will have to live in seclusion in Ji City. However, Great Yin Dynasty has no lack of civil officials to govern the local areas. Therefore, we have to appoint a large number of them to various places. On the other hand, 50% of the civil officials in Great Yin Dynasty, and even all the vassal kingdoms, are from Yu Academy. Once the vassal kingdoms no longer exist, these civil officials will be in control of the local areas, and that will bring us endless benefits." Wuqi was traveling at top speed underground, following the faint scent of a seed of Qianli Xiang that he had stuck on Yu Wendi's collar when the crowd was moving. Then he found the coach that Yu Wendi and Yu Qianqian were riding in. Yu clan was a noble clan, and their coach was simple and elegant, emanating a strong air of antiquity. There were only a dozen guards of 30 to 40 years of Hotian realm standing next to the coach. The defense was almost non-existent. From time to time he would stroke the 2 storage rings on his fingers. The heavy rings made Lu Qingfeng feel very secure, especially when he thought of the 15 kilograms of rare flood dragon blood in one of the rings. He felt a warmth in his heart. Jindan? He also had a chance to condense it into Jindan. The sound of fingers tapping on the wooden board could be heard. It seemed that Yu Wendi was deep in thought. Yu Qianqian's voice rang out again. Qianqian understands. With these people helping Yandan, and with the threat of Daqin, Great Yan dynasty could not be shaken in a short period of time. It looks like Qianqian has no choice but to marry a handsome man like those elders. Let's see if Qianqian's children have the chance to stir up trouble in Great Yan. Just when he was pondering about the Yu family, he heard Yu Wendi ask indifferently, speaking of which, other than Su Mai and a few other archery targets, who else do you think can catch your eye? Helpless, Yandan could only reprimand Princess Zhonglu. Then he announced the end of the banquet. Yu Wendi chuckled and said, "Think about it. With your talent and knowledge, you should be able to guess it." Yu Qianqian sneered and said, "For so many years we Yu family have been hiding our strength and biding our time, which has caused us to lose our vigor. If he is willing to become a member of Yu family, he will be able to give us more vigor and courage." However, everyone under the heaven knew that Yu family was the most noble family in Great Yan dynasty, and they did not have any political enemies. Instead, they were the target that everyone wanted to rope in. They had a transcendent status, and even if they were traveling alone in the streets, they would not encounter any malicious assassins. The dozens of guards of Hotian realm were just for show. Yu family was the only family in Great Yan dynasty that did not need any guards. Following the crowd, Wuxia walked out of the imperial palace. Instead of riding on a horse, he boarded Lu Qingfeng's flying coach. Following Wuqia's wild roar, a shrill and ear-splitting alarm suddenly rang out in the surroundings. After that, a very subtle divine will, which even Wuxia could barely detect, swept across the surroundings. "There are no outsiders," said Yu Qianqian in a low voice. "Yandan, little punk, I've killed the clan leader of Yu family of Great Yan dynasty today. I'll break one of your arms as a warning to others." Yu Qianqian pondered for a brief moment, then suddenly smiled and said, "Since Great Yan dynasty has discovered a great amount of spatial breaching spirit gold, the rule of Great Yan dynasty has become more direct and convenient. Therefore, the vassal kingdoms are no longer needed. Yandan will take this opportunity to eradicate the rebellious vassal kingdoms and weaken their power as much as possible. In the future, perhaps he will completely abolish all the vassal kingdoms, divide them into counties, and set up a county to guard the herdsmen." Wuqia saw the twisted faces of Su Qin, Fan Yuqi, and Qin Wuyang. When Su Qin and Fan Yuqi returned, they would definitely teach their useless sons and grandsons a harsh lesson. As for Qin Wuyang's twisted face, Wuqia had no idea what was the reason behind it. Perhaps he was jealous of Princess Zhonglu for not giving face to Qin clan? Who knew? In any case, Wuqia had decided that he would often find some fun for Qin Wuyang in the future. As for Great Yan dynasty, they valued the inheritance of the Tao of Master the most. A master for a day, a father for life. "Is there any outsider around?" Yu Wendi asked in a low voice. Escorted by numerous guards, the flying coach drove through 2 streets. Then, right in front of Lu Qingfeng, Wuqia transformed his body into a stream of green and yellow energy, penetrated through the bottom of the flying coach, plunged into the ground, and vanished without a trace. It was as if Lu Qingfeng didn't notice the unusual movement of Wuqia. With a faint smile on his face, he waved a small carving knife and slowly carved some fine runes on a pillar. The divine will, which was so subtle that even Wuqia could barely sense, spread out and filled the surroundings. Yu Qianqian said softly, "Your plan is perfect. Su Mai, Fan Jinqi, and Qin Nihu are fighting for Princess Zhonglu. What a wonderful plan." A series of rattling noises rang out. 100 ballistae tore through the air soundlessly, dragging long tails of light behind them as they shot towards the flying coach. The dozens of guards and mounts of Yu clan did not even have the chance to let out a cry before they were crushed into meat paste by the frightening power of the ballistae. Wuxia took a deep breath soundlessly. He sneered in his mind. So, this is the true face of Yu clan? But there was one thing that Wuxia could not understand. Why did Yu clan spend so much effort to stir up trouble in Great Yin Dynasty? Was it just for fun? The muscles on Wuxia's arm tightened, and he abruptly plunged into the ground. In just a blink of an eye, he had reappeared at the end of the street 3,000 feet away. Yu Wendy sighed lightly, smiled bitterly and said, Yen Dan is not a simple man. 4 generations, Yu clan has been stirring up major events under the heaven, trying to plunge Great Yin Dynasty into chaos. But in the end, the efforts of our ancestors were all turned into nothingness by Yen Dan with various methods. This time, after 100 years of hard work, Yu clan has finally achieved some results. But little did I expect that Yen Dan would use an open and aboveboard scheme to destroy all our plans. Wuqi's hair stood up one after another. If not for him concealing his aura with a mystic technique found in Scroll of Stealing, any ordinary escape art of 5 elements would have long been discovered by this divine will. It seemed that this divine will was specially produced to target all kinds of escape arts and mystic techniques. It was similar to the divine abilities found in Scroll of Stealing, such as the heavenly vision, earth-hearing grand magic, which could detect all kinds of subtle and abnormal existences. Yu Wendy breathed out long and short sighs for a while, then solemnly said, Qianqian, through this incident, you have to learn something. Crafty plots and schemes can give you a temporary advantage, but only by using an open and aboveboard scheme, using the overall situation, and using an unstoppable and powerful force to threaten others, can you truly gain the final advantage. For Yu clan, selecting officials from these people to oversee the affairs of the Great Yin Dynasty was definitely much better than those vassals who had their own clan's benefits and legacy. Those vassal monarchs could not give Yu clan any face, but the members of Yu clan would definitely provide the greatest convenience and benefits to Yu clan. The mighty army of Daqin will arrive at the city gate in a few days. Ministers of Great Yin, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and surrender. Throwing away the carving knife, he lifted the curtain and looked out at the dark night that was filled with wind and snow. Then Lu Chengfeng said in a low voice, Wuqi, I've told you before, you and I are brothers, and we will share wealth and honor together. Chengfeng owes you too much. You and I, we are true brothers. Just like the first imperial banquet that Wuqi attended, the banquet ended hastily. 3 unlucky fellows, who thought highly of themselves and had expressed their feelings to Princess Zhonglu, were severely wounded by the thunderbolts unleashed by the enraged Princess Zhonglu. If not for the timely treatment from the imperial physicians, these 3 fellows could have changed their occupation and become the subordinates of Ma Yi, the inner minister of Great Yin. Nowadays, those young men of Great Yin are really useless. Yu Su and the others, although they have the beautiful titles of Silver Flood Dragon, Qilin, and Fierce Tiger, they are merely toys in the palm of our hands. They are not considered as outstanding talents. Yu Qianqian sighed softly and said, If there is one man who can make Qianqian like him, Wuqi is the only one. Although he is a little young, and he has an ambiguous relationship with Zhonglu, he is a very good writer of calligraphy and painting, and he also has some wonderful poems in his mind. His cultivation base and conduct are not bad as well, and he has a cruel and merciless character. He is the best supplement for Yu clan now. Princess Zhonglu, who had the cultivation base of early-stage nascent soul realm in her 20s, was regarded as the one and only peerless genius of Great Yin Dynasty. Although Princess Zhonglu was born with the cultivation base of Xiantian realm, she only had the cultivation base of early-stage Jindan realm now. Yu Qianqian, who was over 10 years older than Princess Zhonglu, had formed her nascent soul. On top of that, she often held all kinds of poetry and painting meetings, and often traveled with those scholars. Basically, she did not have the time to cultivate in seclusion. Yu Qianqian asked in a low voice, Are there any opportunities in the near future? With the appearance of the 5 demon kings, Mod, Sun Kuang, Su Qin, Han Fei, and many other spies have revealed themselves. With that, Yen Dan's reputation has skyrocketed. For the past 100 years, All the methods we've laid out are useless in the face of an absolute strength. Our 100 years of painstaking effort has gone down the drain. With these men, Yen Dan can at least maintain the stability of the imperial court for another 500 years. If we Yu clan want to strike again, we'll have to find a way to strike from these 5 demon kings, Mod, Sun Quan, and the others. Wu Qi could not help but sneer. Everyone in Great Yen Dynasty thought that Yu clan was a noble clan that was passed down from generation to generation. But could a truly noble clan possess such a miraculous technique? When Yu Qianqian unleashed her aura and used the mystic technique, Wu Qi could immediately sense her true overall strength, early-stage nascent soul realm. Yu Wendi answered with a deep voice. It's good that you can think in this way. Now is a good opportunity. In the future, the foundation of your child will definitely be stronger than the one we have now. That will give him a greater chance to succeed, and he will be able to get more training. After a long period of silence in the coach, Yu Qianqian's voice was clearly transmitted into Wu Qi's ears. Chapter 211. Shrill alarms were ringing in all directions, while dazzling beams of light kept shooting towards them from the surrounding city walls. The muffled footsteps of the city defense army came from afar like thunderclaps, adding a strong sense of uneasiness to the dark night. A great number of dark blue shadows kept rising from all directions. The sky patrolling eagle guards had taken control of the sky. Sword beams were wheeling around the sky patrolling eagle guards, as some cultivators had begun to deploy their defenses in the sky. The chariot of Yu clan exploded, as a sheet of pure and rich golden light enveloped Yu Wendi and Yu Qianqian, dazzling yet not dazzling like molten gold. Within the golden light, over 30 pale golden magical crossbows, which had the same thickness as ordinary bolts, and were only a few times longer, were mounted in the center of the golden light. The bolts were spinning at a high speed, while the friction between the bolts and the golden light produced a screeching noise that could cause severe pain to one's eardrums. One of the bolts had pierced deep into Yu Wendi's right chest. Tightly bound by the golden light, the bolt hovered in the middle of his right chest in a stagnant manner. The spinning bolts had caused a severe injury to Yu Wendi's body. A bowl-sized wound was opened up on his right chest, and the strong wind brought up by the spinning bolts was still tearing off thin pieces of flesh from the wound. Yu Wendi, who had lived a comfortable life and never suffered any hardship, had fainted because of the pain. Perhaps he had never even tasted the pain of having his hand pricked by an embroidery needle. If not for Yu Qianqian holding her father up with one hand, perhaps Yu Wendi would have already fallen to the ground. Holding a talisman that glowed with a golden gleam, as if it was composed entirely of golden flames, Yu Qianqian bellowed furiously, "You thieves of Daqin, I, Yu Qianqian, will fight you to the death." Wu Qi kept the magical crossbow into his storage ring, took out a cloak and wrapped it around his hands, then put on a pair of gloves to cover his hands, covering his entire body without exposing even the slightest bit of his skin and flesh. He sneered and said, "What a tough mouth you have, little girl. When I, Daqin, arrive with my mighty army, I'd like to see how you are going to fight us to the death. Hee at that time, I'd like to see if your little mouth can still be so tough." While laughing with a hint of lust, Wu Qi exerted all his strength to activate the 2 false cores of fire element in his stealing heaven meridians. All the enormous energies contained in the other 8 false cores and the false core in his dantian rushed into these 2 fire element false cores, transforming the energies in Wu Qi's body into the purest fire element false cores. A towering flame soared from his body, transforming into a gold core strange sign that measured several tens of feet in circumference behind his back. As his mind flickered, the gold core strange sign behind him gradually took shape. Shockingly, it turned out to be a fire qilin with distinct scales and a lively expression. The 30-feet-long qilin rubbed its fists and palms together as it galloped ceaselessly in the raging flames. Its red horns and silver whiskers were glowing with a dazzling light that lit up the surrounding area for a few miles. With a single step, he crossed a distance of 1,000 feet, exercised the dragon transformation script, and punched Yu Qianqian's golden defensive barrier with all his might. A body tempering technique like the dragon transformation script could allow one's fleshly body to unleash an offensive force several times stronger than the original strength. It was just like how Bai Qitian, with the overall strength of Jin Dan realm, could unleash a mighty force that was not weaker than the Dharma body of an earth immortal. As Wu Qi had attained a minor achievement in the cultivation of the dragon transformation script, he had condensed all his strength into one, and exerted the full force of the dragon's defensive force technique. His right fist smashed down like a falling meteor, carrying a force of 1,000,000 kilograms. A golden light flashed, as a row of purple runes, the size of a water tank, flashed amidst the golden light. Soundlessly, an indescribably great counterforce was sent back to Wu Qi's body. Suddenly, a few bloody wounds appeared on the skin of his right arm, while his bones and muscles were letting out tiny moans and groans under the tremendous counterforce. Wu Qi could not help but give Yu Qianqian, who was enshrouded in the golden light, a great shock. The power of this talisman was actually comparable to the strongest thunder talisman of Heavenly Spirit sect, as it could actually unleash a defensive strength equal to that of an early-stage nascent divinity cultivator wielding a magical treasure. Suddenly, the purple runes emerged, shattering the over 30 bolts that were spinning rapidly amidst the golden light. Yu Qianqian bit the tip of her tongue, and sprayed a mouthful of blood onto the talisman. Immediately, the talisman shone with a blinding golden light, while twisting and twisting golden beams kept rushing out from it. Gradually, they condensed into a vague figure, about 3 inches tall and holding a strange-shaped longsword, hovering above Yu Qianqian's head. Abruptly, the tiny golden figure raised the longsword up high and swung it casually towards Wu Qi. A sheet of golden flame shot whistling out, slashing towards Wu Qi's face. The speed of the sword beam was indescribably fast. Wu Qi could only see a golden flash before his eyes, and in the next moment, the golden sword beam had arrived right in front of him. If it were Wu Qi before he started cultivating the dragon transformation script, he would never be able to dodge this sword beam. Fortunately, he had made some progress in cultivating the dragon transformation script recently. With that, he quickly changed the direction of his feet, and exercised the 9 transformations of Divine Dragon. The 9 transformations of Divine Dragon, which was specially used for fighting enemies. Abruptly, his body transformed into several dozens of twisting afterimages, spreading out amidst the whistling of wind. The golden sword beam swept across the afterimages, turning a large piece of cloth on his chest into ashes. The golden sword beam shot straight along the street, destroying a large part of the city wall of G City a few miles away, which was already glowing with a strong defensive barrier. The tens of city walls inside and outside of G City formed an integrated defense system. When a section of the city wall was destroyed, the defensive barrier on the other city walls immediately changed. A bright flame soared up into the sky, while a great amount of defensive barrier light burst out from the shattered city wall. Gradually, it condensed into a city wall made of pure magical power and natural energies. Yu Qianqian's face turned slightly pale. She cried out in a low voice and spat out another mouthful of blood onto the talisman. Wu Qi snorted coldly and cried out, "Little girl, you are really lucky to have such a treasure talisman with you. Hee, who is the old fool who spent his own blood essence to make this treasure talisman for you? Next time, I'll definitely slaughter every single member of your Yu clan. Hee, I can send you back to the field headquarters, and let His Majesty pamper you." He let out a few strange laughs, as a wave of anger rushed straight into Wu Qi's head. How dare this girl have the intention to touch him? He cried out viciously, "Girl, you have neither a beautiful face nor a sexy body. Even if the lamp is turned off at night, no man will be willing to press on you." However, His Majesty is a man of great talent and bold vision, and His Majesty doesn't mind pampering a so-called talented girl like you once in a while. This is a great favor from His Majesty, and you must remember to express your gratitude. Yu Qianqian's face turned green with anger. She was a woman with neither a beautiful face nor a sexy body that no one wanted. Only a man of great talent and bold vision, the Emperor of Qin Dynasty, would pamper her once in a while? Wu Qi's words were too harsh, as they were destroying Yu Qianqian's pride as a woman. Her face twisted. With the power of the blood essence she spat out just now, She once again activated the magical force contained in the golden talisman. A great amount of golden electric arcs burst out from the talisman, condensing into a golden ball of thunder the size of a human head above Wu Qianqian's head. Right after Wu Qi revealed his true form from the afterimages, Wu Qianqian's eyes immediately locked onto his body with a subtle divine will. Amidst a deep rumble of thunder, the thunderball transformed into a 1-foot-long thunder hammer, spraying countless blinding electric arcs and smashing down towards Wu Qi's head. Right after the thunder hammer was unleashed, a few long and furious roars were heard coming from the direction of Great Yin Imperial Palace. 5 demon kings, Mod Sun Kuang, and the rest of them had joined hands and leaped into a several dozens of miles-long rainbow, bringing with them a frightening and suffocating aura as they approached at top speed. Among the 5 demon kings, Huo Wuyu was the most ferocious and bloodthirsty. After being conferred the title of Imperial Advisor of Great Yin Dynasty, he had regarded Great Yin Dynasty as his own territory. Therefore, when Wu Qi brazenly attacked and killed the current clan leader of Yu clan in his territory, it had made a wild and crazy killing intent burn in Huo Wuyu's heart. When he was still a few miles away from Wu Qi, Huo Wuyu had already bellowed furiously, "Ignorant junior, this is not a place where you can come and go as you please. Die now." Then he opened his mouth and shot out a greenish and gloomy light screen, silently rolling down towards Wu Qi's head. The light screen emitted a pungent stench, and came with a frightening corrosive and devouring force. Vaguely, one could see the twisted faces of millions of wronged souls vaguely visible within it. It was the rotting bone and soul-devouring energy, a divine ability of the lineage of the ancient ferocious bird, the bald owl. It was one of the few vicious and sinister things under the heaven. When Wu Qi saw the death-devouring energy coming down from above, he dared not to face it head-on. He let out a few strange laughs, gave a reluctant look at the father and daughter of Yu clan, who were enshrouded in the golden light. Then, with a blink of his body, he transformed into a beam of red light and plunged into the ground. The thunder hammer smashed forcefully onto the ground. Amidst a loud boom, a nearly 1,000 feet tall thunderbolt swept out in all directions like a tsunami, nearly razing a few nearby mansions to the ground. Soundlessly, the rotting bone and soul-devouring energy swept across the ground, bringing countless snowflakes along with it. Abruptly, a large pit with a diameter of over 100 feet and a depth of nearly 100 miles was created on the ground. The corrosive force of Huo Wuyu's death-devouring energy was very strong. With just a light touch, the street of Ji City, which was densely covered with countless restrictive spells, was corroded and left a deep pit. Right after Wu Qi plunged into the ground, he was nearly hit by the death-devouring energy. Fortunately, his escape art was very fast, allowing him to escape with just a few leaps. Luckily, he was not hit by the extremely vicious death-devouring energy. With a terrified expression, Wu Qi turned to look at the large pit behind him, then silently recited the name of the bald owl, Huo Wuyu. Shaking his head, he flew back to Lu Qingfeng's flying chariot. The cultivation base of a demon king of nascent divinity realm was indeed frightening. Huo Wuyu was also a man who only needed to transcend one last heaven immortal tribulation before he could become a heaven immortal. Therefore, Wu Qi did not feel ashamed when he was chased away by him. With the miraculous ability of Scroll of Stealing, Wu Qi was confident that when he cultivated to the mastery stage of nascent soul realm, he would be able to fight evenly with Huo Wuyu. Considering all the various divine abilities and techniques he possessed now, they were not any weaker than this rotting bone and soul-devouring energy. After returning to Lu Qingfeng's flying chariot, Wu Qi took off the torn cloak, took out a spare set of court clothes and put it on. Then he turned to Lu Qingfeng, who had an anxious expression on his face, and said, "Be careful of Yu Qianqian and her father. They are not good people. Their Yu clan has been stirring up trouble in Great Yin Dynasty, and I have no idea what they are up to. Just now, I borrowed the name of Daqin to assassinate them, but too bad, they were protected by talisman treasures, and I couldn't kill them." Lu Qingfeng knitted his brows into a tight frown and said in a low voice, "If there is something wrong with Yu clan, then this Yu Academy." Wu Qi looked at Lu Qingfeng, shrugged his shoulders and said helplessly, "Without any evidence, I can't do anything to them." In the future, I'll find a chance and kill every single member of Yu clan. I really hate this kind of bastards who always strike from the back, but never let a single drop of water leak out, and make the whole world treat them as the good guys. Lu Qingfeng nodded his head, agreeing with Wu Qi's words. If not because of Wu Qi's marvelous escape art, which rendered Yu Qianqian's divine ability, which specialized in detecting all kinds of escape arts ineffective, perhaps he would never be able to eavesdrop on some private secrets of Yu clan. This Yu clan had concealed themselves too deeply. The chariot returned to Duke Yanli's mansion at top speed. Because of the assassination attempt by Wu Qi, Ji City had been placed under a curfew. All the influential members and ministers who were still out and about were asked to return to their mansions as soon as possible. On top of that, the captains of city defense also asked all the influential members to return to their mansions and take precautions, as the assassins from Daqin dynasty had sneaked into Ji City and severely wounded the current head of Yu clan, Yu Wendi. Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng were talking in low voices along the way. Right when they arrived at the entrance of the front hall, through the widely open door, they suddenly saw Yan Qijuan and Qin Wuyang sitting calmly in the middle of the hall, holding a wine cup in their hands and drinking. What was the crown prince of Great Yan dynasty, Yan Qijuan, and the general of Great Yan dynasty, Qin Wuyang? Why were they here at this time? Chapter 212. Quickly changing his robe, he invited Yan Qijuan and Qin Wuyang to the parlor in the backyard, which was specially used to entertain private guests. The parlor was surrounded by a large number of screens made from crystals. The ground was scorching hot, and the steam was rising from it, preventing the parlor from feeling the coldness of the outside world. The cold wind brought the heavy snow and hit the screens, causing them to produce a series of rattling noises. High up in the sky, sword beams and sky-patrolling eagle guards were seen wheeling and falling from the sky like a large number of shooting stars, adding a sense of mystery to this cold winter night. Naturally, the best wine that could be found in Duke Yanli's mansion was used to entertain the honorable guests like Yan Qijuan and Qin Wuyang. It was the first Duke Yanlu who had buried several thousand wine jars under the cypress green mist vines in the backyard, and now, the wine had become the most excellent wine. Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng personally dug out a few large wine jars from under the cypress green mist vines, which no one had touched for a long time. They mixed the sticky wine paste in them with the freshly brewed wine, then used a small wine pot to boil them in hot water, filling the entire parlor with the aroma of wine. Yan Qijuan's handsome face twitched a little, and he rubbed his palms. Yan Buji, that little rascal, had been guarding these drunken immortal wine with his life, refusing to let go of it. I couldn't even get a share of it, and now, my wish has finally come true. Haha, it was his son who dug it out and boiled it for me. When I see him in the future, I'll definitely mock him. Yan Qijuan chuckled, picked up the small wine cup, and slowly savored the fragrant aroma of the drunken immortal wine into his mouth. Qin Wuyang, on the other hand, was not so particular. He had already held a wine jar in his arms and was drinking to his heart's content, leaving his entire body stained with wine. Upon hearing Yan Qijuan's words, Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng were struck dumb with amazement. Both men exchanged a glance. Then Wu Qi forced a smile and said, "What Crown Prince said seems to be. Does Crown Prince still see Duke Buji often? Doesn't that mean he was killed by someone in the myriad Red River?" Yan Qijuan clenched the wine cup and laughed. He shook his head and said, "Killed? Hehe, Wu Qi, you should know what cultivation technique my father is cultivating with, don't you?" Wu Qi recalled the time when he was in Mo Forest, when Mod used the flame of Earth's core to break open the stone tablets of legacy left behind by barbarians, and found a few cultivation techniques from them. Among them were the mnemonics for the last 2 chapters of Yandan's cultivation method. He remembered that Yandan's cultivation method was called the reincarnation of 9 deaths and 9 lives. Abruptly, he raised his head up and stared at Yan Qijuan with great astonishment as he said, "The reincarnation of 9 deaths and 9 births? 9 deaths and 9 births. This." Yan Qijuan breathed out a long sigh in frustration, then sneered and said, "That's exactly the damn technique. The 9 deaths and 9 lives reincarnation technique allowed one to comprehend the great Tao of heaven and earth between life and death, gathering the samsara chi of life and death, to condense an extraordinary saint body that was neither dead nor alive. This was the essence of this technique. If you want to cultivate this cultivation technique to a profound level, you must comprehend life and death, and work on that line of balance between life and death. Pointing his finger at his own nose mockingly, Yan Qijuan said in a self-mocking tone, Yan Qijuan, the crown prince of Great Yan, is said to be less than 1,000 years old, but in fact, he is over 2,000 years old. His cultivation base is at the peak of Jin Dan realm, and he hasn't even broken through nascent soul realm. Father and the others have inner demons, so they can't break through. Yan Qijuan is a man with peerless innate talent. But why is he still a mere human immortal of Jin Dan after cultivating painstakingly for over 2,000 years? Shaking his head, Yan Qijuan smiled bitterly and said, As the crown prince of Great Yan, I can't always be assassinated by others, and I can't have any accidents happen to me. I have to sit on the throne of crown prince peacefully, letting all the common people and all the civil and military officials know that Great Yan is in a peaceful and prosperous era. Father Emperor can go into seclusion and fight against demonic beasts. He can be beaten by demonic beasts until his limbs are broken, and he has a slim chance of surviving. He can comprehend the Tao of life and death. But as the crown prince, I can't do that. I have to guard Ji City like a clay statue, and I have to stay here peacefully. Spreading his palms helplessly, Yan Qijuan breathed out a long sigh and said, This reincarnation technique of 9 deaths and 9 lives is such a bastard. Without experiencing life and death, one's cultivation base can never improve. I've been cultivating painstakingly for over 2,000 years, and I've consumed countless spirit herbs in Jin Dan. After cultivating painstakingly for over 2,000 years, I've only reached the peak of Jin Dan realm. Damn it. Yan Qijuan cursed out loud. Apparently, he had suffered a great grievance. Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng exchanged a glance, and neither of them answered the question. Qin Wuyang put down the wine urn, wiped his mouth and said with a smile, Yan Buji was indeed assassinated in the Myriad Red River. Not only in the Myriad Red River, when he was roaming around the world, seducing women from all over the world. Countless men who were offended by him had sent out assassins to kill him. But what was the result? In just a short span of tens of years, he was severely wounded and nearly killed 8 times, and suffered countless other minor injuries. Just half a year ago, after the assassination in the Myriad Red River, he successfully broke through the peak of Jin Dan realm, and became an earth immortal of nascent soul realm. Yan Qijuan said coldly, According to the law of Great Yan, once a member of the imperial clan of Great Yan forms his nascent soul, he has to go into secluded cultivation and become a sinecure of Cloud Swallow Pavilion. Therefore, Yan Buji seized the opportunity to escape with the excuse of death, and at the same time, he could draw out some evil spirits, causing them to have a good time. Wu Qi laughed dryly and said, So, who was the one who assassinated Duke Buji? Why did he assassinate him? The cause and effect of everything. Qin Wuyang spread his palms, smiled bitterly and said, It was all a fucking show, a show for those who were watching the show, including that unlucky fellow of mine, Qin Shui. Although he is indeed not a good guy, it was really hard for him to play the role of a complete bastard, who was not a bad guy at all. The intense coldness had rendered Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng speechless. Both of them looked at each other in astonishment, and their bodies stiffened. If the death of Yan Buji, the chaotic situation after his death, and the difficult situation faced by Qin Shui and Wu Qi were all an act, Wu Qi could not help but curse all 18 generations of Yan Dan's ancestors in his heart. It was really a great blow to him that he did not even realize he was being played by someone else. Fortunately, Wu Qi was secretly delighted in his heart. He had gained a lot of benefits, and he had played a lot of people, but they did not realize it either. You play me, I play you, each other. Perhaps, the only unlucky ones were Wei Xiaoxiao and those vassal kingdoms who had colluded with her. They were really unlucky. Then Qin Shui thought of Princess Chuan, and then he thought of Lao Ai who was standing behind her. No wonder Yan Dan always looked calm and composed. When Wu Qi told Jing Ku about the information regarding Lao AI, Yin Dan actually waited until now to force Lao AI out. What a wide net. No wonder he was Yin Dan, the man who had ruled Great Yin Dynasty for over 2,000 years. Wu Qi picked up the wine cup and emptied it in one gulp. After that, he gave Yin Qijuan and Qin Wuyang a thumbs up and said, "What a meticulous plan, not leaving any chance for the enemy. Sigh, if I knew this would happen. Why did Wu Qi go through so much trouble? Why did I have to make so many enemies? Let me see: Wei Merchant, Heavenly Spirit Sect, Myriad Dao Alliance, several dozens of monarchs of vassal kingdoms, Chief General Yue, and ever-changing Yin and Yang Su Mai. Who did I offend?" Yin Qijuan laughed again. He shook his head and said, "Yue and Su Mai can be at ease. Su Mai may be a simpleton, but old Mr. Su Qin has a very strict upbringing. No matter how arrogant and rebellious he is, he will never do something like that in the Grand Hall. As for Yu Su..." An immense killing intent burst out from his eyes, as Yin Qijuan gnashed his teeth and said, "Yu Su deserves to die. Great Yin has given him so much, yet he still colluded with foreign enemies and schemed against Great Yin. This is a crime deserving of 10,000 deaths. Chief General Yu will not hold a grudge against you because of this. You can rest assured. As for Yu Su, he has to die." Lu Qingfeng cleared his throat, bowed at Yin Qijuan and said, "So everything is." Yin Qijuan said coldly, "Everything is for others to see. Chief General Yu will send out endless death soldiers to assassinate Marquis Tianyin. You just need to kill them all. Those death soldiers are men who deserve to die. By killing them all, you will be rendering a meritorious service to the empire." Lu Qingfeng still wanted to ask something, but Wu Qi beat him to it and asked straightforwardly, "Why are you telling us so much?" Qin Wuyang said with a deep voice, "Because Yen Qingfeng is now the chief supervisor of Westfield headquarter of Great Yin. He has to guard the headquarter with a peace of mind, and there are some things that he has to explain clearly. In short, you only need to know one thing: Great Yin Dynasty is as stable as a mountain. No matter it is His Majesty Jing Ku Gao Jianli Yue Tianguang, or me Qin Wuyang, there is no disagreement. We are always standing together." Qin Wuyang smiled proudly, then continued in an indifferent tone, "We came here together, fought together for over 2,000 years, risked our lives together, and finally created the foundation of Great Yin Dynasty. In the future, we will make Great Yin Dynasty stronger and stronger, so strong that we can unify the entire world. So, how can we fight amongst ourselves and split apart? It's just that some people wish to see us fight amongst ourselves, to see us split apart. Therefore, we will fight amongst ourselves and split apart for them to see." Yin Qijuan sneered and said, "We will let them see what they want to see, and then we will take away their wealth and their lives. There is nothing better than this." Taking a deep breath, Yin Qijuan stretched out his hand to Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng and said, "Your performance in the past few months has won our unanimous approval. Although you are still a little immature, you can be of great use. Therefore, welcome to Great Yin." "Welcome to Great Yin." Wu Qi looked at Yin Qijuan, and Lu Qingfeng looked at Yin Qijuan. Both men exchanged a glance, then stretched out their hands and held Yin Qijuan's hand. Qin Wuyang laughed out loud, then stretched out his hand and gave both men's palms a heavy slap. With a faint smile on his face, Yin Qijuan said, "You can continue to fight with whoever you want. You can continue to be on good terms with whoever you want. 8 days later, it will be a good and auspicious day. Chengfeng, you will go to Great Yin Ancestral Shrine and pay your respects to our ancestors. You will be officially listed in the genealogy. You should go and meet Yin Buji as well. That guy is really disgusting for sowing seeds everywhere, but no matter what, he is your biological father." Yin Qijuan twitched his lips, as if he was very dissatisfied with Yin Buji. They had a secret conversation throughout the night. Some things that should be understood by Wu Qi and Lu Chengfeng, and some things that should be known by them, had been understood by them. Wu Qi even knew that the reason why he and Lu Chengfeng could win the approval of Yin Dan and the others so quickly was not only because of MOD's comments, but also because he had the token of 8 swallows in his hand, yet he had never used it to do anything with special privileges. Although they held great power in their hands, they never acted recklessly. This had given Wuxia and Lu Qingfeng great credit. Therefore, they had won the unanimous approval of these core ministers of Great Yan dynasty. When dawn was about to break, Yan Qijuan and Qin Wuyang bade farewell and left. Then Wuxia and Lu Qingfeng saw them off. When they stepped into their chariot, it seemed like Yan Qijuan suddenly remembered something. He smiled at Wuxia and said, "Now that you are one of us, I won't plot against you for that piece of innate earth element essence you obtained in the Rare Treasures Conference. Those useless fools are really hateful. How could they not recognize an innate item? That is really annoying." Qin Wuyang shook his head and sighed. "If not because we also found several dozens of innate items when we came out from this world, we really can't let you have it so easily." He glared fiercely at Wuxia and Yi Yan, then said with a cold voice, "That thing is too tempting. Quickly find a way to eat it, or else, you will have a headache later. That Zhang Yi knows you have this treasure." Surrounded by a large number of guards, both men left. Wuxia, on the other hand, was stunned as he watched them leave. When they came to this world, they found several dozens of innate items. What kind of damned world was this? Chapter 213. After being officially accepted into the core circle of Great Yan dynasty, in the following few days, Lu Qingfeng devoted himself to absorbing the flood dragon blood essence, carefully tempering his fleshly body with the body tempering technique of flood dragon. With the help of Wuxia, he planned to forcibly form the Jin Dan with the mystic technique of energy seizing. Meanwhile, through a teleportation formation, Wuxia came to a secret cave located in the depth of Meng Mountains, where he took out the innate earth element energy essence he bought in the Rare Treasures Conference, and the 36 dragon scales given to him by Catfish Flood Dragon. Just like what Yan Qijuan and Qin Wuyang said, these innate items were too eye-catching, and it was better for him to digest them as soon as possible. Generally speaking, when an ordinary cultivator found an innate item, he or she did not have the ability to craft it into a magical treasure. They could only bring these innate items with them, using the stray innate energies to temper their fleshly body, transforming their fleshly body into an innate body of Tao. In other words, it could be considered as using the innate items as much as possible. Unless one possessed the cultivation base of a gold immortal, or had the help of an innate divine flame, no ordinary cultivator, or even a heaven immortal, could craft an innate item into a magical treasure. Fortunately, Wuxia was lucky enough to find the divine flame of order. Although he could not control it as he wished, with a little bit of firepower and some mystic techniques found in Scroll of Stealing, he could still craft a usable magical treasure. Wuxia weighed the clump of innate earth element energy essence in his hand, then used his divine will to sense the faint ripple of soul coming from the tiny crystal core in its center. He breathed out a deep sigh. It was indeed an innate divine item, as it had already given birth to a thread of its own soul. If this clump of innate earth element energy essence was not taken out from the spirit cave by the people from the merchant, perhaps many years later, it would give birth to a very powerful innate spirit treasure, or even a mighty innate divine beast. But now, as Wuxia wanted to craft this clump of innate energy essence into a magical treasure that he could use, he could not keep this thread of soul. Innate items were extremely difficult to craft, and if there was still a thread of innate soul entangled in it, no one could subdue this thread of innate soul, unless he was a high-tier gold immortal. What a pity, what a pity! Wuxia sighed, then laughed again. Fortunately. Amidst a five-colored gleam, the silver lotus shot out from between Wuqia's brows. A wisp of divine flame of order, which was several times stronger than before, was twisting and drifting on its pistil. The surrounding temperature rose abruptly, driving away all the other natural energies in the secret cave, leaving only the pure fire element energy, which was at least 1,000 times denser. The air turned bright red. When Wuxia took a deep breath, he felt as if he had swallowed a ball of sticky magma. His entire body was boiling hot and uncomfortable. After fiddling with the clump of earth element energy essence for a while, Wuxia resolutely threw it into the divine flame of order. Abruptly, that tiny crystal core let out a high-pitched shriek. That wisp of pre-world soul abruptly released a dense soul wave, which was filled with despair and begging, as if there was a child crying and begging in Wuqi's mind. Wuqi hardened his heart and refused to be moved by the voice. Casually, he pointed his finger at the divine flame of order. Immediately, the innate wood element energy transformed into a bright green beam and shot out from his fingertip, fusing with the divine flame of order in a blink of an eye. Immediately, the flame expanded to the height of 3 feet. The surrounding fire element energies quickly gathered towards the divine flame of order, raising its temperature by another 50%. Abruptly, the earth element energy essence moved. Countless tiny yellow sand particles wheeled and wheeled rapidly in the air, transforming into a ring of dense yellow mist that firmly protected the crystal core in the middle. A divine item was formed by nature, and it already had its own consciousness. If anyone wanted to kill it, it would automatically exercise its innate divine ability to protect itself. Watching this, Wuqi clicked his tongue in amazement. If not for the fact that he was still 108,000 years away from that realm, he would really like to keep this clump of earth element energy essence and craft it into a magical treasure when he became a gold immortal in the future. With the cultivation base of a gold immortal, it was more than enough to subdue this soul and refine it into the item spirit of an innate spirit treasure. Anyone below the realm of gold immortal should never dream of such a sweet dream. Sighing, Wuqi quickly performed some incantation gestures with both hands. A set of seal of earth from the script of ancient law, which possessed the mighty power to split the mountains and split the earth, quickly formed into 99 sesame-sized yellow runes on his fingertips, emanating a blinding yellow light. His fingertips trembled rapidly as the yellow talisman smashed towards the earth element energy essence along with a deafening rumble of a landslide. It disturbed the originally flawless and dense yellow mist, causing a tiny crack to appear on it. The divine flame of order, with 2 colors of green and purple, rushed into the crack, enveloped the tiny crystal core in a flash, and annihilated the innate soul essence in a flash. Bright patterns that were visible to naked eyes rushed out from the spot where the crystal core was annihilated. An extremely pure source of soul energy was surging violently, spreading out in all directions along with a faint whistling noise. Abruptly, Wuqi focused his eyes. Wisps of divine gleam shot out from his mystic eyes of universe, quickly absorbing the source of soul energy into his eyes and fusing it into his spiritual ocean and soul. A thick and dense nourishing aura kept coming from the depths of his soul. The innate soul condensed from the innate earth element energy essence had the property of earth element as well. After absorbing the source of soul energy, not only did Wuqi's soul become a few times stronger, his soul itself had also become as solid and heavy as a lofty mountain, and could no longer be shaken by any external force. The 7 holy deities and devils, which were transformed from Wuqi's soul, were cheering and jumping with joy. They had also absorbed a great amount of source energy, and their vague figures had become much clearer. Vaguely, they looked like 7 other Wuqis, who were jumping and jumping in his spiritual ocean. Some were laughing, some were crying, some were angry, and some were worried. All of them had different expressions, and they were emanating waves of bizarre energy that could stir one's heart and soul. After devouring 50% of the soul energy emanating from the innate soul essence, Wuqi poured the remaining 50% into the 7 little gods and devils. Later on, he would need them to exert more strength, so he needed them to eat and drink their fill first. As the innate soul essence was destroyed by the divine flame of order, the clump of earth element energy essence lost its controlling core. The rapidly spinning earth element energy essence became weak and lifeless, slowly condensing into a yellow clump of soil the size of a human head. Apart from being extremely heavy, this clump of soil did not have any energy fluctuation, and it looked just like a lump of soil that could be found anywhere on the ground. With a faint smile on his face, Wuqi forcibly exercised the energy meridians of 5 elements, carefully forcing out a drop of clear green liquid from 2 false cores, glinting with a 7-colored gleam. It was a drop of innate nectar that Wuqi had spent a lot of effort to condense in his false cores, and now, Wuqi was using it in a very extravagant manner. He had forcibly absorbed over 100 human immortals' gene Dan, and only then did he manage to condense a drop of innate nectar in each of his false cores. But now, for the sake of this innate earth element energy essence, He had used 1/5 of all the innate nectar in his false cores. With his heart bleeding, Wuxia kept dripping the drop of innate nectar onto the earth element energy essence while murmuring under his breath, "What a waste, what a waste." The cultivation base is the foundation of one's cultivation base. If this drop of innate nectar were to fall on someone, it would be more than enough for an ordinary man to break through to the realm of Mahayana, realm of Jin Dan. What a waste, what a waste. If not for the fact that you are an innate earth element energy essence, I would not be willing to waste it like this. As soon as the innate nectar of wood element fused with the earth element energy essence, the extremely heavy and hard earth element energy essence suddenly became as light as a feather, faintly rippling like water. Without any hesitation, Wuxia quickly took out the 36 dragon scales given to him by Catfish Flood Dragon, as well as 3 large vats of original dragon blood essence stored in the Black Dragon Spirit Ring. The divine flame of order burned fiercely, and in the blink of an eye, the dragon scales were melted into 36 dragon scale-shaped golden beams. Without caring about anything else, Wuxia shoved over 18,000 kilograms of original dragon blood essence into the dragon scales. The 36 dragon scale-shaped golden beams absorbed all the original dragon blood essence, then abruptly unleashed a blinding light that caused Wuxia's mystic eyes of universe to feel a severe pain, and nearly blinded him. Even a single drop of original dragon blood essence contained an enormous amount of energy. With over 18,000 kilograms of original dragon blood essence being injected into the 36 dragon scales in such a luxurious manner, and after being purified by the divine flame of order, the quality of these 36 dragon scales had been greatly improved, making them almost comparable to the dragon scales taken from the body of a divine dragon of heaven immortal realm. Forcibly exercising the energies in his body, Wuxia coughed out 3 mouthfuls of prime blood essence in one breath, causing the flame of the divine flame of order to rise abruptly, swallowing all the water-like earth element energy essence, and the dragon scale-shaped golden beams. Quickly, Wuxia performed incantation gestures with both hands, casting out all kinds of defensive and offensive runes that he could use according to the script of ancient law. The energies in Wuxia's body were being consumed at an incredible rate. Every time he cast out a set of runes, his energies would be completely depleted. At this point, he had no time to think too much. From the Black Dragon Spirit Ring, he took out the demon cores of those powerful demon beasts collected by Yingzheng and shoved them into his mouth, using the powerful energy contained in them to continue forming runes. After 24 hours, Wuxia had consumed 36 powerful demon cores in a row. Suddenly, a strong light flickered in front of Wuxia, as an ancient-looking, pale golden wrist shield appeared in front of him. The wrist shield was not very big, measuring about 1 foot and 2 inches long, which was the length of an arm. Its width was 3 inches, which was the width of an arm, and its thickness was only half an inch. 36 dragon scales formed a perfect formation of 9 hulls and 8 trigrams on the surface of the shield, and countless runes could be vaguely seen on the surface of the wrist shield. The edge of the wrist shield was extremely sharp, and the dragon scales were emitting a bright gleam that could make one shudder. Waving his left hand, Wuxia fastened the wrist shield onto his left arm, then injected a little bit of energy into it. Immediately, a thick and heavy yellow light enveloped his entire body. The sword of Greedy Wolf was thrust out along with a jarring whistling noise, brutally slashing onto the yellow light. The sword was knocked far away, but the yellow light did not budge at all. Wuxia nodded his head satisfyingly. Judging from the defensive strength, perhaps even an earth immortal of nascent soul realm would not be able to break through it. Then, with a twist of his wrist, 36 earth-yellow dragon scale-shaped beams shot out from the wrist shield, piercing through the air and shooting in all directions. He scanned these dragon scales with his divine will, and found out that each of them contained a great amount of earth element energy. Each of these dragon scales weighed about 50,000 kilograms, and their edges were extremely sharp. With such weight and sharpness, even an earth immortal's dharma body would not be able to withstand the attack. Wuxia smiled. With his current cultivation, it was not easy for him to be able to refine such a magic treasure. The true form of earth element energy essence still existed, and when his cultivation base reached a higher level in the future, he could refine this wrist shield again, and it would still be a pretty good innate spirit item. Although he would have to find an excellent soul essence to be the item spirit at that time. That would be a problem for the future. From now on, you will be the earth element dragon scale shield. And my life will depend on you to protect it. The innate gold and silver lotus is not very popular, so I'll have to rely on you more in the future. Waving his arm, Wuxia retracted the silver lotus and the divine flame of order. A vast auspicious light burst out from the black dragon spirit ring, as Wuxia released the chariot of 8 horses. With a fiery gaze, he stared at the item of virtue of human emperor. It was time for him to reclaim it. Chapter 214. After taking a few rounds around the magnificent chariot, Wuxia could not help but keep praising it. The 8 heavenly horses seemed to be living creatures, but at the same time, they seemed to be some kind of spirit treasure. The chariot itself was also a precious treasure. Just the defensive mechanism that Wuxia could see was so strong that it rendered him speechless. The yellow and black virtue's energies rippling around the chariot made Wuxia drool with greed, and he wished he could swallow the chariot in one gulp. If the vast and heavy virtue's energies could be gathered in Wuxia's body, he would be able to transform into the sacred body of virtues of human emperor. At that point of time, apart from a few divine abilities and body movements, all other magical techniques would have no effect on Wuxia. But too bad, although the scroll of stealing claimed that there was nothing under the heaven that could not be stolen. The virtue's energies of human emperor were not something that could be stolen so easily. In order to steal the virtue's energies from the chariot, Wuxia would first have to steal a kingdom of human emperor, and make Wuxia the ruler of that kingdom. It was a very difficult and troublesome task, and Wuxia did not have the mood to do such a complicated task. What a great treasure! Looking at the chariot, Wuxia could not help but throw his head back and let out a loud laugh. It was different from the universal water spirit's divine cauldron of Yu the Great. The cauldron was a suppressive item, an item of virtues that could suppress all aquatic clans under the heaven. Therefore, although both of them were treasures of human emperor condensed with virtues, and both Yu the Great and Yingzheng could control them, the chariot was a personal treasure. It was the personal belonging of King Mu, the King of Mu, the King of Mu, and had nothing to do with the general trend of the world. Therefore, although Yingzheng could control the divine cauldron of Yu the Great, he could not do anything to the chariot, which had been thoroughly infiltrated by King Mu's personal aura. Unless Yingzheng spent a lot of effort, using his aura of human emperor to forcibly expel the aura that King of Mu had gathered in the chariot of 8 horses, Yingzheng, Yandan, or any monarch of any dynasty would never be able to drive the chariot. However, a mighty monarch like Yingzheng would disdain to pay such a huge price for a treasure that could only be used to protect one's life. Therefore, the chariot was of little value to Yingzheng. But now that it's in my hands, it's no longer up to you. Chariot of 8 horses, O chariot of 8 horses, forget about your old master and obediently become my, Wuxia's treasure. With you around, our chances of escaping will be 100 times greater. Wuxia clicked his tongue in admiration and said, "It's a pity that you're too eye-catching. Unless it's a life or death situation, I really don't dare to use you." Then he carefully took a step closer to the chariot of 8 horses. But just as Wuxia took a step forward, an auspicious light suddenly shrouded the area, blocking Wuxia's path. A boundless majestic aura of an emperor came pressing right at Wuxia's face, as if there were millions upon millions of people roaring furiously right next to his ears, asking him to kneel down and kowtow to the chariot of 8 horses. Wuxia quickly took a few steps back, shaking his head discontentedly at the chariot of 8 horses. If Emperor Mu was present, Wuxia would still kneel and pay his respects to this ancient human emperor. That was what he should do. But how dare this inanimate object force him? Wuxia? Grinning coldly, a beam of 7-colored light shot out from Wuxia's forehead. Amidst the light, the 7 holy deities and devils tumbled and dashed out. The 7 fiends formed from Wuxia's soul energy bounced on the ground for a while, then grew to the height of 1 foot. Their bodies were shrouded in various colors, and there were various ripples of emotions spreading out from their bodies. If an ordinary cultivator were here, once he was infected by these ripples of emotions, he would immediately have all sorts of thoughts in his mind, causing his 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures to flare up at the same time. The Yin flame would rise from the soles of his feet, burning away his blood essence and bone marrow. Wuxia sat cross-legged at the front of the chariot of 8 horses, staring straight at the chariot. With both hands locked into an incantation gesture, he controlled the 7 holy deities and devils to approach the chariot. As the 7 holy deities and devils had been nourished by 50% of the innate soul essence from the earth element energy essence, their bodies were now as strong as their fleshly bodies. Therefore, the pressure unleashed by the chariot had no effect on them, and the surging auspicious golden light could only produce tiny ripples on their bodies. All of a sudden, a bright gleam flashed from the 7 fiends, and they merged into a 7 feet tall figure that looked exactly the same as Wuxia. However, the expression on its face was changing rapidly, and the facial muscles were wriggling as if they were cramping. The figure kept chuckling evilly, while both of his hands slowly locked into an incantation gesture, which resonated with Wuxia's hand incantation gesture. Gradually, a large sheet of bizarre glows was emanating from the figure. The 7 sets of incantation gestures related to the 7 holy deities and devils found in Scroll of Stealing were performed over and over again, while half of Wuxia's blood essence was injected into the figure. Gradually, the figure's body was filled up, and something that looked like flesh and blood was growing out of it. The boundless aura of the human emperor spread out from the chariot, but it was absorbed by the figure together with Wuxia's blood essence and aura. Like a large blender, this bizarre fiend, which was formed from the fusion of the 7 holy deities and devils, slowly mixed Wuxia's blood essence and the aura of the human emperor with King Mu's, then slowly broke them into the tiniest energy particles, and began to transform them in a magical way. When water and cement were mixed together, they would turn into concrete. The aura of Wuxia's blood essence was water, and the aura of the human emperor in the chariot was cement. Under the magical catalysis of the figure, both of them quickly merged into one. Gradually, Wuxia's aura began to emanate from the chariot, while a vast aura was vaguely emanating from Wuxia's body as well. Using the power of heavenly thunder, a thread of Wuxia's nascent divinity carefully left his body, fusing with the body of the figure through a miraculous connection. Within the empty body of the figure, Wuxia's nascent divinity was soaking in the boundless aura of the King of Mu, slowly absorbing the auspicious golden glow and aura and transforming his image. Gradually, countless illusions began to appear before Wuxia's eyes. He saw the real King of Mu. From the moment the chariot of 8 horses was created, from the moment the 8 heavenly horses were harnessed to the chariot, from the moment the King of Mu brought an endless army and marched across the land, conquering the lands from east to west, from south to north. Wherever he went, all the kingdoms bowed their heads. As the territory of Great Zhou grew larger and larger, the aura of virtue gathered on King of Mu's body grew stronger and stronger, and the divinity in his body was stimulated as well, becoming more and more magnificent. In the end, King of Mu had become a god among mortals, and just like the legendary human emperor, Xian Yuan, he ascended to the heavens by riding a dragon. As for the chariot of 8 horses, the divine artifact that accompanied him in conquering the lands, it remained in the mortal realm, passing through many new owners. However, the divine artifact had its own rule, that the chariot would only recognize the mighty King of Mu as its only master. As such, its new owners could never order them around. As for the chariot of 8 horses, it never cared about who its new owner was. It just silently missed its old owner. Therefore, it did not even care about who its new owner was, or what he looked like, as it could not remember him at all. While absorbing the aura of the chariot of 8 horses, the thread of nascent divinity released by Wuxia gradually transforming into the appearance of King of Mu, the King of Mu, according to the memories of the chariot. He was clad in the golden cloak of 9 dragons, holding a long sword in his hand, sitting on the chariot of 8 horses. His body was shrouded in a boundless flame, leading countless mighty soldiers to conquer the lands. Wuxia discarded all the thoughts in his mind, and just kept recalling the image of King of Mu and the memories of the chariot of 8 horses. He absorbed the aura emanating from the chariot of 8 horses and fused it into his own body. then mixed it with his own blood essence and aura. He was hypnotizing himself, telling himself that he was the king of Mu, the master of the chariot of 8 horses. He kept repeating this sentence over and over again. Gradually, the ripples of his soul began to get closer to the soul ripples of King of Mu and the memories of the chariot of 8 horses, eventually reaching a level that was no different from King of Mu's soul ripples. Suddenly, the chariot of 8 horses leaped and cheered excitedly, unleashing countless auspicious rays that enveloped Wuxia. In the chariot of 8 horses' perception, their master had returned. Their master, King of Mu, had returned. Joyfully, they activated all the restrictive spells on the chariot of 8 horses, opening up a path that led straight to the core of the chariot, welcoming the return of their master. Wuxia was lifted up by a magical force, then sat safely in the chariot of 8 horses. Soundlessly, the thread of nascent divinity Wuxia had fused into the core of the chariot of 8 horses. After that, a silver lotus abruptly rose from Wuxia's nascent divinity. The divine flame of order burned everything in the surroundings, completely burning the thread of divine will produced by the chariot of 8 horses into nothingness. Then Wuxia separated a thread of his nascent divinity and branded it on the core, holding the chariot of 8 horses tightly in his hand. Abruptly, the 7 holy deities and devils split up, their bodies glowing dimly as they squeezed back into Wuxia's body to recuperate. Wuxia retracted the nascent divinity and soul he had released. Suddenly, a huge amount of sweat burst out from his body. Nearly all of his energy had been depleted. Although he had successfully subdued the chariot with the mystic technique found in Scroll of Stealing, the cost was too great. The reason why he could still sit safely on the chariot of 8 horses was because of the miraculous ability of the chariot, which allowed it to automatically absorb the surrounding natural essence to nourish his body. Breathing out a long sigh, Wuxia patted on the chariot of 8 horses and let out a soft cry. The chariot of 8 horses expanded abruptly, as the 8 heavenly horses grew to about 100 feet long. Although they still had the shape of horses, they vaguely looked like divine dragons. The chariot itself had also expanded to several hundred feet in circumference, turning into a clump of golden auspicious clouds that could no longer be seen. With a thought in Wuxia's mind, the chariot of 8 horses transformed into a stream of light and shot out from his secret palace. Surprisingly, the several dozens of defensive mechanisms he had painstakingly constructed did not have the time to play any role, as the chariot of 8 horses went straight through them. The chariot of 8 horses went straight through them, not destroying them with brute force. Instead, it went straight through all the defensive mechanisms Wuxia had deployed, as if it had entered an uninhabited land. Panic-stricken, Wuxia quickly halted the chariot of 8 horses, then turned around in astonishment. He saw that the lofty mountain where he built his secret palace was now 100,000 miles behind him. With a thought in his mind, he had crossed the distance of 100,000 miles. The speed was almost comparable to the divine ability of teleportation, used by a nascent divinity cultivator. Wuxia did not exert all his strength to drive the chariot of 8 horses, as he did not have the overall strength to drive the chariot to its full speed at the moment. Instead, he merely injected a tiny bit of energy into the chariot, and it made the chariot burst out with a frightening speed that nearly scared himself to death. If I were to inject all my energy into the chariot, I would be able to travel 1 million miles in an instant. Even if a nascent divinity expert were to use the divine ability of teleportation, he would never be able to catch up to me. Wuxia secretly calculated the godly speed of the chariot of 8 horses, and suddenly, he burst out laughing complacently. After laughing for a full 15 minutes, only then did Wuxia put away the chariot of 8 horses. The enormous chariot transformed into a stream of auspicious light, and fused into Wuxia's right arm, forming a sheet of golden auspicious light the size of a child's palm on his arm. Amidst the auspicious light, 8 faintly visible heavenly horses could be seen with their heads held high and chests puffed out, as if they were neighing at the sky. Following Wuxia's will, this sheet of auspicious light could appear and disappear at will. It was an extremely magical sight. After throwing his head back and letting out another 3 wild laughs, Wuxia pinched his fingers and calculated the time. After that, he hastily returned to his secret palace, using the minor teleportation formation to return to Ji City. It was time to form the Jin Dan for Lu Chengfeng. Chapter 215. After returning to Ji City, right after Wuqi walked out from the house he bought secretly, he was startled by a suffocating air of resentment that towered into the sky above Ji City. The resentment was so strong that it had condensed into a grayish cloud that nearly materialized, hovering above Ji City. Although only cultivators could see this gray cloud, it was more than enough to affect the mood of ordinary people, turning the atmosphere in the entire Ji City into a very strange one. Instinctively, Wu Qi scanned the surroundings with his divine will, and was shocked once again. Hastily, he put on his official robe, hung the identity token and the token of 8 swallows on his waist, then quickly sprung up into the sky and flew towards the direction of the Imperial Palace. The Imperial Palace of Great Yin Dynasty was located right in the center of Ji City, and the main entrance of the Imperial Palace was facing the 4 biggest main roads of Ji City. Currently, from the 4 main gates of the Imperial Palace to the east, south, west, and west, countless scholars with white cloth wrapped around their heads were kneeling on the ground, stretching all the way from the Imperial Palace to the outermost city gate of Ji City. On the 4 main roads, there were more than 500,000 scholars kneeling on the ground. All the scholars kneeling on the ground were holding 3 incense sticks in their hands, the wisps of smoke rising into the sky. Every once in a while, these several 100,000 scholars would shout out at the same time, "Daqin is brutal, Qin Huang is immoral. Your Majesty, please issue a decree quickly, send out an army to attack Daqin, and avenge Master Yu." A suffocating air of resentment kept emanating from these scholars. It was the entanglement of the resentment from them that had gathered into a layer of grayish cloud above Ji City. Among them, those scholars who stood closer to the main gate of the Imperial Palace had a stronger air of resentment emanating from them. The resentment from several thousand Great Yin civil ministers, who were clad in the court uniform of middle and lower level officials, holding incense sticks in their hands, and kneeling near the main gate of the Imperial Palace, were as strong as the resentment from some ferocious ghosts. Using the mystic eyes of universe, Wu Qi saw that the energy from these civil ministers had turned pale black. What is going on here? How many days has it been? Wu Qi stared blankly at the vast crowd of scholars, and couldn't help but twitch his lips. A few secret agents of the scouting office happened to pass by the rooftop. When they saw Wu Qi standing there, they hurriedly came up and greeted him. Upon hearing Wu Qi's question, the leader of the secret agents smiled bitterly and said, "Duke of Tianyan, there's something you don't know." 9 days ago, the current great editor of the Imperial Court, the master of Yu Academy, Yu Wendi, was severely wounded by Daqin's assassins on his way back from a banquet in the Imperial Palace. Right now, he's on the verge of death. These scholars are either from Yu Academy or are currently studying in Yu Academy. Naturally, they're here to seek justice for their teacher. The secret agent leader lowered his voice and said, "It's fine outside, but the inside of the palace is in chaos." Many officials clamored for His Majesty to immediately issue an edict to dispatch an army to attack Daqin. But they don't even know where the Daqin dynasty is. How are they going to mobilize their army? After cupping their fists to Wu Qi, the few scouting officers leaped into the air and continued their patrol. Although these scholars did not even have the strength to truss a chicken, with just a word, a tongue, or a pen, they could stir up a storm in Great Yin Dynasty. Never in Great Yin Dynasty had Great Yin Dynasty come across a situation where several tens of thousands of scholars were petitioning together. Therefore, the people of Scouting Office dared not to be negligent, fearing that they might make some mistakes and bring a greater disaster to themselves. Standing on the rooftop and gazing at these resentful scholars for a while, Wu Qi shook his head, spun, and returned to Duke Yanli's mansion. Right now, Lu Chengfeng was in the backyard slowly practicing a fist technique that looked soft, but was actually a technique that gathered all the innate energy in his body into one ball, using it to push the muscles and tendons in his body, constantly tempering his body. Obviously, he had digested and absorbed the blood essence of Flood Dragon left behind by Wu Qi. At this moment, the strength of Lu Chengfeng's corporeal body was much stronger than before. When he moved his body, punched and kicked, A faint sound of thunder could be heard. Wuqi stopped the sword beam and landed right next to Lu Qingfeng. Upon seeing Wuqi, Lu Qingfeng was overjoyed. He asked hastily, "Why did you come back after so many days? What happened outside?" Wuqi shook his head. He showed the wrist shield on his left hand, smiled and said, "It's no trouble at all. Just for the sake of 2 defensive items, I accidentally wasted some time." No matter it was the earth element dragon scale shield, or the chariot of 8 horses, both of them were treasures of very high grade and powerful. Initially, Wuqi thought he could settle everything in 3 days. But in the end he spent 9 days to fully absorb and subdue both treasures. When he saw Wuqi's items, Lu Qingfeng quickly told Wuqi what had happened in the past few days. Just yesterday, on an auspicious day, Lu Qingfeng had gone to Great Yan Dynasty's ancestral shrine located deep within the imperial palace, where he formally kowtowed to the ancestors of Great Yan Dynasty, and became one of the core members of Great Yan Dynasty. In the Cloud Swallow Pavilion located right next to the ancestral shrine, Lu Qingfeng met with Yan Buji, who was cultivating in seclusion. After going through life and death trials and giving birth to his nascent soul, Yan Buji praised Lu Qingfeng greatly, and even gave Lu Qingfeng many benefits. Apart from that, the most sensational event in Ji City these days was the petition of those scholars from Yu Academy. When Wu Qi pretended to be Daqin's assassin, he had pierced through Yu Wendy's right chest with a crossbow bolt. The entire right lung of Yu Wendy was ripped to shreds by the bolt. Although he had taken some spirit pills to heal the wound, they could only save his life. At least, it was impossible for Great Yan Dynasty to find such immortal pills to regrow a lung out of thin air. With half of his lung missing, Yu Wendy could hardly even talk. The once elegant, and talented Yu Wendy had now turned into a sickly old man who was at his last gasp. The Grandmaster craftsmen from Mo Sect and the secret agents from Scouting Office had worked together to examine the crossbows collected at the scene. They confirmed that these crossbows were not made by any sect in Great Yan Dynasty, but were indeed from outside Great Yan Dynasty. There were 3 strange metal components found in these crossbows, which had never been found in Great Yan Dynasty. The serial number of the workshop of Daqin Dynasty, the serial number of the craftsmen, and the serial number of the talisman masters who engraved the formations were also verified by Yen Dan and a few other people. They confirmed that it was indeed the style of Daqin's armory. The blame was firmly placed on Daqin Dynasty. All the scholars who were related to Yu Academy were enraged, and they formed groups and knelt before the imperial palace to petition. Over the last 9 days, the 4 main roads of Ji City were completely blocked, and the travel of the residents in Ji City was greatly disrupted. Grinning coldly, Wu Qi did not comment on the behavior of the disciples of Yu Academy. As for the fact that he had assassinated Yu Wendy, he would not be so stupid as to spread it around. Lu Qingfeng had also kept the news to himself, treating it as an onlooker. Wu Qi grabbed Lu Qingfeng's hand, squeezed his muscles and bones, and sensed the current strength of his fleshly body. Nodding his head, Wu Qi said with a smile, "This has nothing to do with us. Before the Imperial Palace makes a decision, I'll help you condense the Jin Dan as soon as possible. Leave everything to me. You just need to focus on circulating the cultivation technique found in the script of Heaven Patching Formation, and don't pay attention to anything else." He pressed Lu Qingfeng onto the ground, asking him to concentrate on circulating the cultivation technique found in the script of Heaven Patching Formation. Then, Wu Qi waved his left hand, unleashing a large sheet of yellow light from the Earth Element Dragon Scale Shield, which enveloped the entire backyard. He walked quickly around Lu Qingfeng for a while both of his palms kept injecting specks of bright light into Lu Qingfeng's body, stimulating all the major acupoints and activating all his energy and blood. Then he took out a huge amount of blood essence of dragon, slowly injecting them into Lu Qingfeng's body through the hand incantation gesture. Not only that, he even consumed the enormous amount of energy and blood essence he obtained from cultivating the dragon transformation script to help Lu Qingfeng massage his meridians, using the blood essence of dragon to strengthen his body once again. When Lu Qingfeng had completely entered into the state of inner vision and meditation, Wu Qi took out several dozens of demon cores from Black Dragon's spirit ring, each emanating a powerful demonic energy. After swallowing these demon cores into his body, Wuxia used his true flame to remove all the impurities in them, leaving behind only an extremely pure energy essence without any demonic energy or impurities. After that, he circulated this energy essence, which was equivalent to the total energy possessed by 2 peak stage Jin Dan human immortals, over and over again in his 7 stealing heaven meridians. Slowly, Wuxia fused a part of his innate energy and a thread of innate liquid of 5 elements into the energy essence. He looked at Lu Qingfeng and said in a low voice, "You and I are brothers, and I, Wuxia, am not a stingy man. Although I can't teach you the scroll of stealing, I should still give you some benefits." Opening his eyes, Wuxia forcibly circulated the energy and blood in his body, extracting a part of the energy and blood in his 5 internal organs, and a part of the energy from the acquired spirit pearls of 5 elements in his dantian, fusing them into the energy essence, transforming it into a pure energy that was between innate and acquired. Silently exercising a technique recorded in the Scroll of Stealing, called the Reverse Saint Energy Imbuement Technique, which was specially used to frame someone else, Wuxia slowly injected this pure energy into Lu Qingfeng's body, controlling it to slowly fuse with Lu Qingfeng's energy, blood, and soul, then slowly flow down to his dantian, communicating with the energies of 5 elements in the heaven and earth, forming into a fist-sized golden Jin Dan. Wuxia was sweating profusely, while a dazzling flame was bursting out from Lu Qingfeng's body, as filthy and dirty blood kept bursting out from his body. The function of this reverse saint energy imbuement technique in the Scroll of Stealing was a little shameful. If a cultivator of the Scroll of Stealing stole the magical treasures or energy essence of some almighty experts, and was chased by those almighty experts, they would use this evil technique to separate a tiny bit of their aura, and inject it into some unlucky scapegoat, using it to attract the attention of the owner, while the cultivator could seize the opportunity to escape. In order to hide it from those powerful beings, the method of infusing qi into the scapegoat's body was extremely marvelous. The spirit qi injected into the scapegoat's body could perfectly fuse with the scapegoat's blood qi and soul, without any conflict. Carefully and according to the method, Wuxia smoothly helped Lu Qingfeng form the Jin Dan. Suddenly, dark clouds began to gather in the sky. A thunder tribulation that was comparable to the Jin Dan tribulation of Longbow people was brewing. Using a heaven-defying mystic technique, Wuxia had helped Lu Qingfeng form the perfect Jin Dan that encompassed all 5 elements, and stood between innate and Hotian. On top of that, he had forcibly pushed Lu Qingfeng from Xiantian realm to the peak of Jin Dan realm. This had greatly offended the law of heavenly punishment, which maintained the balance between the heaven and earth. Therefore, the thunder tribulation was extremely powerful. Wuxia opened his mouth and coughed out a stream of blood. At the same time, when Lu Qingfeng formed the Jin Dan, he too fell to the ground. This reverse saint energy imbuement technique not only consumed an enormous amount of energy and blood essence, it also consumed a great amount of soul energy. This time, Wuxia had forcibly separated 10% of his soul energy and gifted it to Lu Qingfeng, improving the strength of his soul by nearly 30 times. It was true that Lu Qingfeng had gained a great benefit, but Wuxia had also suffered a great loss. However, the power that Lu Qingfeng, who had studied the Tao of formations and possessed the cultivation base of peak Jin Dan realm, could unleash made Wuxia very happy. A large sheet of bright light burst out from behind Lu Qingfeng's back, and the strange sign of Lu Qingfeng's Jin Dan made Wuxia grin from ear to ear. It was an enormous turtle shell of 8 trigrams, exactly the same as the turtle shell that recorded the arts of heaven patching formation. At the thought that Lu Qingfeng would have to carry a turtle shell on his back for a very long period of time in the future, Wuxia was so happy that tears began to flow down his face. Amidst the deafening rumbling, the thunderbolts came crashing down, but Wuxia pulled them out with one hand and quickly absorbed them into his soul, helping him to form another thread of nascent divinity. At the same time, the golden bells in the imperial palace of Great Yen kept ringing for a total of 10,800 times. Countless voices rang out at the same time. Great Yen is going west, crusade against Daqin. Great Yen is going west, crusade against Daqin. The disciples of Yu clan, who were kneeling on the street, were cheering and cheering. The cheers swept across the entire Ji city, like a tsunami. The army was going to crusade against Daqin. Great Yan, who had been hiding its claws and teeth for over 2,000 years, had finally begun to move its enormous body. Chapter 216. Meng Village. What used to be a desolate little village had now become a bustling place filled with people. It was as if it was a metropolis. A large teleportation formation, about 1 mile in diameter, was erected in a forest that had been leveled to the ground outside Meng Village. Thousands of energy stones and jade slabs of different sizes were hovering in midair, flickering with colorful flames. Every time the flame flickered, over 10,000 people would walk out from the formation. Under the command of a group of officials clad in black official robes, these people would quickly line up and move in different directions. The people who walked out from the formation came in different shapes and sizes. Some of them were soldiers of Blood Swallow Army, some were soldiers of Black Swallow Army, who were clad in black armors and riding on black ox-headed beasts, emanating a murderous aura. Most of them were craftsmen and laborers, who were holding various tools in their hands, and looking energetic. Those who were responsible for controlling the formation were 30 Earth Immortals of nascent Soul Realm, and 120 human immortals of Jin Dan Dynasty. The leader was a member of Great Yin Dynasty's Imperial Clan, an Earth Immortal of Peak Stage Nascent Soul Realm, the 9th son of Yin Qijuan, Yin Qi. He held an astrolabe in his hand, which was used to control the formation. From time to time, he would shout at the cultivators under his command, instructing them to adjust the positions of the jade slabs, making it connect with a teleportation formation located several 100,000 miles, millions of miles, or even tens of millions of miles away. From Ji City, from other big cities within the territory of Great Yin Dynasty, and from the capital cities of various vassal kingdoms, a large number of soldiers, craftsmen, and laborers had arrived at Meng Village through the teleportation formation. In just 3 days, over 1 million people had gathered near Meng Village. Although the teleportation formation used a great amount of spatial breaching spirit gold as its core, the large-scale teleportation of over 1 million people within 3 days had still consumed a huge amount of resources of Great Yin Dynasty. The energy stones that had been stored over the years had been used up like tidewater. Wuxia was standing on top of a newly built watchtower on the wall of Meng Xiaobai's house, looking at the teleportation formation that was working at full capacity. He couldn't help but feel shocked by the power of Great Yin Dynasty. He had been here for 3 days. Lu Qingfeng had stayed in Little Meng City, supervising the construction of the defensive system. Meanwhile, he had brought a group of people to Meng Village, and was responsible for the construction of the outpost defense line. As he was the person in charge, Wuxia didn't need to do anything. All the affairs, big or small, were shared by middle and lower level officials from Ji City, and everything was carried out in an orderly manner. Finally, Wuxia had a first-hand experience of the latent power of Yu Academy in Great Yin Dynasty. There were 50,000 middle and lower level officials in Meng Village, and 40,000 of them came from Yu Academy, and all of them were disciples of Yu Wendi, because Yu Wendi had been severely injured by the assassin from Daqin. These men were working like they had been injected with chicken blood. They worked day and night, forgetting to eat and sleep. Like wind devils, they kicked the butts of those soldiers, craftsmen and laborers, making the woods around Meng Village bustling with activity. In just 3 days, with Meng Village as the center, the foundation of a 20 miles long and wide city had begun to take shape. In the depth of Meng Mountains, 50,000 miles, 30,000 miles, 10,000 miles, 5,000 miles, 3,000 miles, 1,000 miles, 500 miles, 300 miles, and 100 miles. With these 9 distances as the limit, the construction of the 270 outposts had started. With the powerful execution and management ability of these officials, the construction of Meng Fortress and the construction of the 270 outposts had started almost at the same time, and the progress was almost exactly the same. There was no difference between the 2 projects. How many building materials were needed, how many craftsmen and laborers were needed, how many formation masters were needed, and how many of them were needed. Under the arrangement of these officials, it was like the most elite Swiss clock, running with the utmost precision without any error. One day ago, Wuxia had inspected the working standard of these officials, and the result had shocked him. The results shocked him greatly. These government officials, who had exploded with all of their passion and swore to teach the great Qin dynasty a harsh lesson, worked as if their lives depended on it. And the precision of their work was simply shocking. The distribution of materials and personnel in the 270 outposts was so precise that it was as precise as a brick, an iron nail, or even a handful of rice. There was no delay, no waste. These insane officials had even considered the difference in experience, skill, and physical strength of every craftsman and laborer. Basically, the manpower and material resources in all the outposts had reached a precise balance. Faced with all this, Wuxia could only stand there and stare blankly, staring blankly at the large number of people who kept rushing out from the teleportation formation. At the same time, he was slowly absorbing the surrounding natural energies, using them to improve his cultivation base and replenish the energy essence and soul that he had consumed a few days ago. On top of that, he had experienced the threat of Yu Academy firsthand. Although there were only 40,000 disciples of Yu Academy here, they were able to achieve such frightening precision, efficiency, and great effectiveness. How many lower-ranked officials in Great Yin Dynasty were from Yu Academy? If all of them were to cause a disturbance, perhaps Great Yin Dynasty would be in a great trouble. The disciples of Yu Academy reminded Wuxia of the disciples of Confucian school back on Earth. They were the power of a school that could control an entire dynasty, and the government of an entire country. Different from the disciples of Confucian school, who constantly fought with each other. The disciples of Yu Academy had a common spiritual leader. They worked together seamlessly, which made them an even more frightening political force. If not because Great Yin Dynasty was an imperial court of immortal cultivators, if not because Yen Dan and his men possessed the power that could wipe out the entire Yu clan in a blink of an eye, perhaps Yu Academy would have long taken control of all the political power of Great Yin Dynasty. Even so, because of the existence of these disciples, Yu Wendi had a transcendent status in Great Yin Dynasty. He could even discuss the marriage of Princess Zhongli with Yen Dan, and he could even propose some candidates to Yen Dan. A noble and honorable family, he. Taking a deep breath, Wuxia made the natural energies in the area of a few miles around him roll and tumble. Suddenly he let out a cold, gloomy laugh. He glanced around and saw that under the enthusiastic work of those officials, the foundation of Meng Fortress had begun to take shape. It measured 20 miles in both width and 20 miles in length, with a width of 150 feet, and a height of 150 feet. The defensive mechanisms and formations on the wall would be deployed according to the standard of G-City's defense. This was a strategic defensive mechanism that could fight against nascent divinity cultivators. At the heart of Meng Fortress, which was also the center of Meng Village, a deep pit that measured 1,000 feet in both width and length had been dug out from the original meeting hall of Meng Clan. A nearly 1-mile-tall platform would be built here, and together with the other 80 platforms in the surrounding, they would form the strongest attacking force of Meng Fortress. A group of disciples from Mo sect sent out by Mo Di were working diligently on the other side, together with a group of master craftsmen employed by G-City. 81 star-shattering fiery dragon crossbows, which borrowed the underground energy from underground energy veins, and absorbed the power of underground flame, were placed on these high platforms. They could unleash a full force attack equal to the full force attack of an Earth Immortal of peak stage nascent soul realm. When 81 star-shattering fiery dragon crossbows were unleashed at the same time, their power was equal to the full force attack of an early stage nascent divinity cultivator, possessing a frightening power that could instantly kill an Earth Immortal of nascent soul realm. The machinery of Mo sect is matchless under the heaven. Mod, that old fogey, once he stepped into the path of cultivation, I never thought he would become such a freak. When Wuxia thought of the mighty star-shattering fiery dragon crossbows, he could not help but feel a chill running down his spine. Yet, such a frightening weapon was only ranked 9th among the 10 most powerful weapons produced by Mo sect. What else could Wuxia say to the frightening Mo sect? Suddenly, numerous sword beams were seen flying towards them from a far distance. With a keen eyesight, Wuxia saw Lu Chengfeng standing in the foremost sword beam. Soon, the sword beams descended, and Lu Chengfeng came and stood right next to Wuxia. He threw a glance at the bustling construction site and the crowds of people, then shook his head and said, "The disciples of Yu Academy are very capable. I have nothing to do in Meng City, so I just need to hand them the blueprint, and they will handle everything. They will even be in charge of supervising the mobilization of soldiers, materials, and craftsmen from all the vassal kingdoms in the West." Suddenly, I feel like I've become an idler. Wuxia twitched his lips helplessly, nodded his head and said, "Yu Academy is really frightening." The scene of several tens of thousands of scholars kneeling in front of the entrance, TSK. If I were His Majesty, I would have long wielded my saber. Crack! Wuxia raised his right palm up high and gently slashed it down. Whenever he thought of Yu Wendy and his daughter, his belly would be filled with a venomous flame. How dare they try to harm me, Wuxia? Aren't you just looking for trouble? Lu Chengfeng recalled the scene of several tens of thousands of apprentices from Yu Academy petitioning together, and his body shuddered as well. Both men exchanged a glance, and were about to say something, when suddenly, they saw a dark cloud rolling and rushing toward them from the sky not far away from the east. Several dozens of demon clouds were chasing closely behind the dark cloud, and from time to time, a strange, evil laughter could be heard coming out from the demon clouds. Vaguely, a shrill, wild laughter could be heard. "Little girl, I've taken a fancy to you. Come back with me, and you'll have a good life. Every day, you'll have the fresh meat of young boys and girls to eat. Isn't that better than being alone? Haha. Why do you look so fresh and spirited?" As the wild laughter echoed out, several dozens of dark blue thunderbolts thrust whistling out, and smashed onto the fleeing dark cloud. A deep rumble of thunder echoed out, and a large part of the dark cloud was blown away, revealing the body of a fat catfish that measured over 3,000 feet long. Wuqi's face twisted into a tight frown. An old acquaintance. But someone actually said she has a beautiful face? What kind of taste is that? It was a fat catfish with a body of over 3,000 feet long, with a pair of horns on its head, a few shiny dragon whiskers under its chin, and 4 dragon claws on its abdomen. Vaguely, dragon scales could be seen peeking out from under its smooth skin. Who else could it be if it was not the catfish flood dragon, the king of the Lake of 4 Waters? However, in Wu Qi's view of beauty, catfish flood dragon could never be compared with the word beautiful. One could say that she was handsome, mighty, and heroic, but the word beautiful was really wrong. The demon cloud that released the dark thunderbolts retracted abruptly, revealing a huge, ugly black fish. The black fish's body was about 5,000 feet long, and it had 3 huge ugly fish heads. Its huge mouth was filled with sharp teeth, and mucus was constantly dripping from its slippery black fish skin. Even from such a distance, a fishy smell was still wafting from the fish. He also had a horn on his head, but it was only a single horn. His lower abdomen also had a dragon claw, but it also only had one. On its back, there was a tens of feet long fin that was as sharp as a blade, and water vapor lingered around its body, making it look arrogant and threatening. With a sharp and unpleasant laugh, Heiyu's 3 mouths spat out a large amount of mucus at the same time. 3 extremely long tongues popped out of his mouth and flicked around for a while. Then several hundred huge dark blue bolts of lightning whistled out from the tip of his tongue. The fleeing catfish flood dragon was hit by the dark thunderbolts, and it made her blood splatter all over her body. The pain made her curse furiously. The demon cloud was completely destroyed, and catfish flood dragon's huge body could no longer fly up into the sky. She drew an arc in the air and fell down toward the construction site of Meng Village. Without hesitation, Wu Qi leaped up into the sky with a sword beam and shouted, "How dare you? This is the territory of the Great Yin Dynasty. How dare you invade our territory? Do you know the mighty name of the Great Yin Dynasty's emperor, Yin Dan?" He let Catfish Flood Dragon pass, but stopped in front of the black fish and the dozens of demons and devils brought by him. The black fish opened his mouth and yelled, "What bullshit, Great Yin? I've never heard of it. What bullshit, Yin Dan? Is he famous? I'm his ancestor. Little brat, you're just a little Jean Dan human immortal. And you dare to provoke me? Be a good boy and let me eat you. Although the black fish was cursing him, Wuxia laughed happily. You're Yin Dan's ancestor? These words could not be any more wondrous. Suddenly, the aura around Meng village changed. A couple dozens of earth immortals of nascent soul realm, and several hundred human immortals of gold core realm from Great Yin Imperial clan stepped onto clouds and sword beams, their eyes bursting with flames of fury as they soared into the sky. You're tuning into the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.